Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, members of council, administration, those that are joining us in the gallery, and those that are watching through our town's YouTube channel. Welcome to council meeting on this January 27th. And if you look outside, it's a balmy 7 degrees out there. Enjoy it while it lasts, because it's going to be minus 27 in about 3 days. So it is amazing that we've gone from minus 27 to plus 7, and then now we're going to be back to minus 27. So just as FYI, if you have plans to do things, do it now while it's warm, because it's miserable when it's cold and you're trying to do something. Members of council, there is an agenda before you. Administration, anything else to add to the agenda?
Thank you, Your Worship. Nothing further to add.
Okay, Deputy Mayor, for the motion, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move that Town Council adopt the January 27th, 2025 regular council meeting agenda as presented this evening.
Thank you. Call the question. All those in favor? Okay, and that's carried. Okay, moving on to number 3 of our agenda is the public input session. This is the time that we allow residents or stakeholders to address council on anything that's not on the current agenda. Administration, has anybody registered to speak?
Through your worship, no one has registered.
Okay, thank you. Anybody in the gallery like to speak to council on anything that's not on the current agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to number 4, which is presentations and delegations. We have nothing scheduled for tonight. And moving on to number 5 of our agenda is statutory public hearings. We have nothing scheduled for tonight as well. So moving down to number 6, which is the adoption of council minutes. So this is the RCM of January 13th. Councillor Hansard.
Your Worship, I move that Town Council approve the January 13, 2025 regular council meeting minutes as presented.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Hansard. Members of council, you had the opportunity to review them. Any errors, omissions, or questions on those minutes? I did not see any in there, so I'll call the question. All those in favor? Okay. Did you have something?
No, sorry.
Okay, thank you. As carried, moving on to number 7, which is council boards and committee minutes. There's nothing in our agenda. So moving on to number 8, which is bylaws. Today we're dealing with bylaw 2717/LUO/25 for Fairways North Stage 3, and this is the land use amendment bylaw. And so this will be this will be first reading. So go ahead, administration.
Thank you, Your Worship and Town Council. This presentation is for first reading of Bylaw 2717/LUO25 for the Fairways North Stage 3 Land Use Bylaw Amendment. As this application deals with the Land Use Bylaw Amendment, it falls within the land development tier of the land use planning framework within the town of Stony Plain. This application is located in the Fairways North neighborhood, situated between the Greybrier neighborhood to the east and the Stony Plain Golf Course, which binds the neighborhood on the south and west. As you can see from this aerial context map in the red hatching, the bylaw area is divided into several different portions within the neighborhood, which will be described in detail later in this presentation. The neighborhood level plan for this area is the Fairways North Area Structure Plan, which was adopted in 2013. Also in 2013, the neighborhood was redistricted to align with the development concept shown on the screen. Since that time, the developer has changed, and the current developer has had several successful subdivision applications for stage 1 and 2, mainly in the south portion of the plan. Moving forward with stage 3, the applicant has discussed and worked with administration to bring forth a proposal that meets the general intent and objectives of the ASP and has minimal impact so as to not require an ASP amendment. This proposal would consolidate P1 Parks District, reallocate residential areas to while preserving the overall residential density, improve the road network and its connectivity, and make minor adjustments to park and utility areas as required. More specifically, this central portion being outlined is being proposed to be a P1 Parks District to create a larger and more functional park space with frontage along the road and better align with the town's park space guidelines. Adjacent to that is a proposed R5 small lot mixed form residential district, which is a medium density residential district within the town's land use bylaw. And on the other side would be a P1 to R1, the large lot detached dwelling residential district, a low density residential district which aligns with just south. The rest of the block is also R1. On the southern portion of the plan is proposed R2, the detached dwelling residential district, another form of low density residential district within the town's land use bylaw. These lots would be adjacent to the golf course. Adjacent, or to accommodate the R2 area is proposed cul-de-sac being outlined on the screen there, which would be one of the proposed changes to the road network. And additionally, another change to the proposed road network would be a north-south road connecting the north portion of Greybrier Drive and the south portion of Greybrier Drive as well, allowing for better connectivity throughout the neighborhood. On the edges of the plan, you'll notice several slivers being recommended to change. On the west side of the plan is R2 to P3, the utility district, and then R5 to P3. These would accommodate utility requirements leading into a future stormwater management plan or management facility. On the north side of the neighborhood is P1 to R2, just to accommodate potential residential lotting, and then R2 to P1 parks to accommodate an extension of the trail system that exists within Greybrier neighborhood. There's also a R1 to P3, also to facilitate utilities and potential trail connections on the east side of the plan. And on the south side of the plan is an R6 to P3, also to facilitate utility requirements. To better illustrate these changes, on the left side of your screen is the current land use bylaw map, and on the right side of the screen would be the land use bylaw map if the proposal was approved by council. Again, this stresses the central P1 parks area, the medium density in the form of R5, just adjacent to that, the low density residential in the form of R1, the low density residential in the form of R2, along with its proposed cul-de-sac, the north-south road connecting the north and south portions of Greybrier Drive, this being called Grey Wedge Point, which improves connectivity, especially when compared to the existing proposed road network, which would terminate in a cul-de-sac. And this map also shows the several small slivers being proposed to be changed today. If council gives first reading to this bylaw, administration would move forward with advertisement in accordance with the public advertisement bylaw. This would include a post on the town website and signage on site. The public hearing would be tentatively scheduled for February 24th, 2025, after which council may decide on second and third reading. Thank you, and happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. It's very informative and just kind of showcases the kind of enhancements of the changes that administration or the developer wants to make in that area. Members of council, questions for clarity and understanding? Councillor Loynes, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just for clarification, on page 37, the aerial shot we see to the west is a storm pond, roughly looking. And then when we talked on page 38, it is marked as a special study area. And then further to page 39, the presenter talked about stormwater management. Can I just get clarification as to if that is an actual storm pond, if it's a naturalized area, or if we're going to be expanding on a stormwater management area?
Okay, thank you. So on page 38, where it's asterisk, it says a special study area, and that's for storm water management. So I think, have we created that storm pond there yet?
Through your worship to Councillor Loynes, we have not created that storm pond officially yet. There is an area where in part part of stage 2 when they were doing some of the dirt balancing where there is some either stockpiling or some lows in there. I think that was done kind of as a preemptive grading just so that it saved time in the future. But ultimately, that area has not been finalized. It does have P3 zoning, which is our utility district, and is proposed as a storm pond that would be required for any area past stage 2A in terms of the stormwater retention and management.
Okay. Anything else, follow-up? Okay. Councilor Laurie?
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for the presentation. You mentioned that the consolidation of the Parks District was to create a more functional park. Has the developer given any indication of what they mean by that? Are they looking to add an amenity into the area? Is there something specific that they're looking at? Or is it simply just a larger open green space connected as one?
Go ahead.
Through your worship to Councillor Laurie, at this point in time, they are toying through a couple different ideas. At this point, those would be defined at the detailed engineering drawing stage in terms of what those amenities would be when the details of that park space are determined. So at this point, no, nothing has been decided on. Again, at this point, it was just to make sure from a land use planning perspective, we had a larger consolidated park there instead of two smaller areas that were more difficult to program in.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate the question there from Councillor Laurie is one of the ones that I had wanted to ask as well, and I certainly appreciate a larger park space, and I appreciate that the developer's looking at doing something with that space, not leaving it just as a green space. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's about 2 acres, I believe, looking to admin. Did I get that right? I think that park space was about 2.
Administrator?
Through your worship to Councillor Anderson, yeah, about 2 acres. It's about just under 0.8 hectares, so yeah, approximately 0.2 acres.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Yeah, so just a general comment there. I do want to ask, though, some of the homes in the existing development, just sort of where the end of the current development and the new development is being proposed, there's a lane access there. That goes from Greybrier Drive, and we can kind of see it go down to that P3 towards the bottom of the screen. Will the homes on the west side of that line also have rear lane access, or are they expected to be front lane access, or to be determined?
Your worship to Councillor Anderson. The intention is standard in our R1 is they would generally be front attached garage homes. There is nothing to say that they couldn't have a rear access there. I know many of the homes in the Greybrier, Briarwood Point, I believe is the name of the road there. Those lots there usually have front attached garages, some of which have sheds or other accesses onto that lane there. So it does provide a little bit of flexibility in terms of how access is presented to the lots.
Okay, no, and I appreciate that. The homes on the east side, I believe, are R1 as well, and they have that rear lane access, which leads to the second question. If those do become all rear lane access, is there any issues with exit evacuation if there's an emergency, that sort of thing, or would that be beneficial to see that rear lane continue through to the new proposed road to the bottom of the map that we're looking at?
Through your worship to Councillor Anderson. In this case, you can see the R1 to the P3 is a small little area at the end of that cul-de-sac that currently kind of has a little bulb out there where you can turn around currently. As part of the detailed engineering that's taken place so far, there would be the intent to have a little trail connection there that would provide an emergency access sort of thing. Again, in the interim, there's actually a gravel road there, but again, with that being a utility lot, it does have the ability to provide a trail and access through there. That said, it is not intended to necessarily provide that in the long term. It would just provide the access out onto the north side there onto Greybrier Drive.
Yeah, sure, and I appreciate that. And we see that in other areas in the community where the trail is sort of a second egress point in an emergency. So I appreciate the explanation. Mr. Mayor, I do have one more quick question.
Go ahead.
Just in the lead sheet from a policy standpoint, it's noted that this meets the general requirements of the EMRB growth plan and the MDP. So just a question with the dissolution of the EMRB as of, I think, April 1st of this year. Just wondering how those growth plans will continue to affect our planning moving forward.
Through your worship to Councillor Anderson. At this point in time, some of the details are not public or have been decided in terms of what would go forth. To my knowledge right now, we would just continue with the same premise we have right now, where any statutory plan, as per the regulations, is generally required to go there. We would continue that process until such time that provincial legislation is changed or updated to not require that.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Hanser?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Dibble, Manager, Planning and Infrastructure. Have you been given any indication when the developer would propose the extension of Graybrier Drive, giving a second full access in and out of this neighborhood? And what in this development would trigger that road being developed?
Go ahead.
Through your worship to Councillor Henderson. So as part of the area that's currently has been developed in terms of the road has already been put in there. So if you look just to the east of the R6 to P3, there's a little strip there on the south side. Thanks for showing that there.
Are you able to point that out with your...
There we go. So the area that's known as 2A, which is the area that kind of includes the little loop road there, as part of that development, they actually are required to have a second emergency access already. So at the north part of the road, just north of where the icon is right there, there's actually already being created an all-weather access that would provide access to that laneway to provide the ability currently to drive into Fairways North Stages 1 and 2A, and then loop northward down the alleyway to get into Graybrier Drive on the north side. So that actually will already be created already, or is already created right now. And then as they do further into stages 3 here, we'd expect them to connect further north there. But again, I haven't seen specific staging if they're doing kind of a 3A or 3B. But again, they'll already have that secondary access made as of now. So.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I have another question, Your Worship. There's one residence, 2 or 3 maybe on the same cul-de-sac on, I'm looking for my written name of my street there. I think it's Fairways Avenue, Fairways Drive North. That have had what they claim is an inordinate amount of water drainage being pumped out of their basements into the street, freezing in the winter. And I know the mayor has had numerous meetings with them, bringing different counselors in at different times. What is going to mitigate further drainage and water problems along the way as we add in a rather large amount of residential dwellings into this area?
Through your worship, the councillor answered. A couple of comments. So we guess the town has had a couple of conversations. Town staff have met with a couple of residents along the block on concerns with their sump pumps and their overland drainage. We do continue to work with those residents on a case-by-case basis. These comments and observations are shared by the developer. So these are, while we're at a planning stage right now, those are things that we consider when we are looking at when the town is looking at the engineering, detailed engineering that the manager had noted. Additionally, I'll just add that the developer that's currently here is, I believe the manager of planning said this, it's a new developer that took over from a previous one. So they are looking at those issues that have been brought forward to see how they can make them better and mitigate them going forward.
Okay, and one last real quick question, Mr. Mayor. It could be answered at a later time even.
Go ahead.
Through to the general manager, please. What is the proposed total number of dwelling units in this whole new area once it's built out? Do we know that? And that would include any of the more dense units?
Through your worship, the councillor answered that it's something we don't have on hand. We could put an email response back together, council, to give an estimated number. I will add, though, that the total actual number will depend on the final zoning approved by council, as well as the total proposals brought forward. But we can give an estimate for sure.
And that could come back to us, Mr. Mayor, if this passes first reading for second and third reading, is there a public hearing going to take place on this?
Yes, I think it was scheduled for
February 27th or
20
something?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. That would be good, too, just so the public is aware.
Yeah, Your Worship, maybe I'll just confirm that we'll be able to provide an estimate as indicated, and we will ensure that's included in the public packages going forward, should council see fit to pass first reading tonight.
Okay, any other questions, Council Councilor?
No, I'm finished. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Members of Council, any other questions, comments? Okay. I do have a question to administration. In terms of the development of Phase 1 of Fairways North here, I know a couple years ago we looked at changing the tee boxes, the sight lines and everything for the golf course to alleviate or reduce the number of golf balls ending up in the backyards. Have we had any comments from the developer regarding the Phase 1 of this development?
Through Your Worship, to all of council, I'm not aware of any comments that we've received specifically regarding golf balls. Just to kind of reiterate here, in terms of some of the planning work that was done, there are two large municipal reserve areas on the south side, right, as shown here, as well as another one further to the west. And again, both those areas there were allocated to prevent areas where golf balls were known to hit, to ensure that there was a reduction in any potential golf balls going into, say, private property. Thank you.
Thank you for that commentary. So then I'll ask the same question regarding the lot that is on the south side of it. We're looking at to have rezoned from P1 to R2. I think knowing that hole is number 2 on that golf course, and a lot of people go over that area. That's why there's that sliver that was carved out as a P1 to prevent some of the balls going into properties. And then this was kind of like maybe a landing area here. So has been thought given to how do we address the golf balls in this area that was originally zoned P1?
Your Worship, I'll put a bit of context into the question. Certainly from the golf course operations, we've been working with planning to certainly address the potential of golf balls entering into these new homes that might get built here. Definitely we've tried to mitigate as much as possible in terms of hard structure being built along, it's close to our boundary line. You do bring a good point there with the P1 to R2. That was a bit of a concern for us. We have talked, like we did with those on hole 8 and other holes where perhaps nets are going to be required in order to allow this type of development to occur. The other thing that we've also looked at from the golf course operation as a whole is perhaps hole 2 becomes a par 3 and we take hole 3 into a par 4. So we just alter the course a little bit depending on what we see once the operations once homes start to build, and we just see the sequencing of what starts to happen at the golf course. So certainly the staff over there are working closely with the planning staff to ensure that if this becomes a problem, we've got some mitigating strategy that might require a bit of a longer term solution to it, but certainly nets are considerations and continued conversation we have with the developer.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. That's all the questions I had for first reading. Members of Council, any more questions for clear understanding? Definitely looking forward to the public hearing and just a little more information as we have the developer come and present, and we can also ask questions of clear understanding from the developer. Councilor Pletchko, with the motion, please.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. The Town Council give first reading to bylaw 2717/LUO/25, a bylaw to amend land use bylaw 2686/LUO/24, and that a public hearing be scheduled for February 24, 2025.
Thank you. Members of Council, any questions, comments, and debate on the motions? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor?
Mr. Mayor. I did have my hand up when you asked for comments, questions
Okay.
further debate. Just a comment. I have some concerns about this proposal as it's put forward to us, but I don't believe that all of the wisdom will rest with council. And so generally speaking, I do support passing a first reading to give the public an opportunity to hear more about the development and to have their say. So thank you. Just wanted to go on record with that.
Okay, thank you for your comment. And we already voted on that, so that's passed. So thank you. Moving on to 8.2, which is bylaw 2715/G/25, and that's the election bylaw. Go ahead, administration.
Thank you. Through your worship to members of council, the report before council this evening requests approval of a revised election bylaw to regulate the 2025 municipal and school board elections. Municipal elections in Alberta are regulated by the Local Authorities Election Act, which allows discretionary provisions that municipal councils may enact by bylaw or resolution. The town's election bylaw captures both regulatory processes defined in the Act, as well as additional criteria within council's authority. Bill 20 legislation, introduced in 2024, brought forward several amendments to the Act which impacts the running of elections, resulting in amendments to the town's election bylaw. The bylaw has been updated to reflect these changes and addresses some additional administrative and clerical changes for better clarity. Bill 20 prohibits the use of tabulators to count and reconcile the ballots cast during an election. This change will result in new processes being established related to the form of ballot used, voting procedures, and ballot counting processes. Bill 20 has expanded the use of special ballots to all eligible electors within the municipality to provide a more flexible and accessible option for voting. Previously, special ballots could only be provided for those with a physical disability, those who are absent from the municipality during the voting days, and those who are involved in the election. Bill 20 also introduced the requirement for each municipality to create a permanent electors register, primarily using information received from Elections Alberta. The changes required by Bill 20 are expected to have an impact on the voters' experience at the voting locations, as well as awaiting the voting results. With the removal of voting tabulators, which allowed municipalities to establish the ballot card used, ballots must now follow the regulations within the Act, which states that a separate ballot must be used for each individual office to be elected. The town could potentially have 4 offices for election in 2025: mayor, councillor, public school board trustee, and separate school board trustee. This will require each elector to be issued up to 3 ballot cards, and possibly more if a provincial referendum or Senate question is added. It is anticipated that this will increase the time it takes for an elector to be issued, mark, and deposit their ballots in the ballot boxes, resulting in electors being in a voting location for a longer period of time. Tabulators used in previous elections provided instant voting results as the machines sorted and counted the votes as they were cast. Results were typically available shortly after the close of voting locations. The removal of tabulators and the requirement for ballots to be counted by hand will substantially increase the staffing requirements on election night and will result in a delay in the release of election results. Results of voting are anticipated to be delayed until the early morning of the day after the election. The new requirement to have a permanent electors register will require collecting and recording of voter information at the voting station, which is anticipated to create longer wait times on voting days. As the Act now requires that an eligible elector must be listed on the permanent elector register to vote, all voters will be required to complete a registration process. Registration can occur prior to the voting days or at the voting location on election day. Pre-registration will consist of electors visiting the Elections Alberta website within a set time frame and registering on the provincial elector register. The province will be sharing this data with the town in advance of the October election to be used as a starting point for the town's election register. The town is responsible to ensure any eligible elector who attends a voting location to vote that is not listed on the register is added to the register prior to being issued a ballot. The registration process requires collection of detailed information, which takes time to input into the register database. This information will be shared back to the province after the election to be incorporated into the provincial electors register. To streamline the voter experience at the voting location and to facilitate the most up-to-date information shared from Elections Alberta, voters will be encouraged to register as a voter on the Elections Alberta website in advance of the October election. Pre-registration will allow voter cards to be sent to the town's registered voters to provide for a fast-track process when attending a voting location to receive a ballot. An enhanced communication strategy and outreach will be completed between April and September to inform and engage electors in the pre-registration process. For those not registered by the established cutoff date or not appearing on the list, those voters will be able to register on-site at the voting locations. The on-site registration will increase the time the voter is in attendance at the voting location. The changes required by Bill 20 will impact the town's 2025 municipal election planning. An enhanced communication strategy will be required to educate electors on the new permanent elector register, expanded special ballot process, and the potential delay of election results after the voting locations close. Increased election workers will be needed to facilitate voter registration as well as vote counting after the voting locations close. Increased supplies will be required related to ballot cards, special ballot packages, and advertising, and where applicable, the use of technology will be utilized to facilitate the permanent elector register. As many of these are brand new processes across the province, it is challenging to benchmark estimated costs to implement these changes. The province has indicated that they will not be providing any additional funding to address the required changes and that municipalities are responsible for the related costs. Administration will strive to find efficiencies to limit the financial impact to the election budget. However, it is acknowledged that the cost of the 2025 municipal election may be higher than anticipated. As the proposed election bylaw primarily addresses Bill 20 changes and minor administrative amendments, administration is requesting 3 readings of the bylaw this evening. Thank you, and we'd be happy to take questions.
Okay. Thank you for the presentation and the updates so that we're in line with the MGA. Members of Council, any questions for clarity and understanding? Councilor Hansard?
Mr. Mayor, I'll try to tread carefully not to offer opinion here, but
No problem.
I do have concerns about all of this being put on the municipality at the beginning of an election year and no additional funding coming from the province to help pay for any of it. And I'm just curious, if you or anyone else was aware that all of this was going to hit us in our election year and that it would be as extensive without, to my best of my knowledge, consultation from any of the municipalities as to what we even thought about this. I guess I've asked a question in there somewhere.
Yes, Councilor Hansard, yes, there was lots of engagement to the municipalities through RMA and also AB Munis. There was a huge conversation over the last couple Alberta municipalities conferences where a lot of municipalities did not support this change, as it did add additional dollars to our budgets without getting anything back from the provincial government. I think we were not, as Town Stoney Plain, we're not in favor of the changes that were listed there. RMA were not in favor of the changes, and Alberta municipalities were not in favor of the changes. However, we're not the provincial government. The provincial government approved those changes, and they signed it into law, I believe it was November of last year, to make it official. I'm not too sure exactly when they signed it, but they did pass it, and they didn't sign off until a little bit later. So, as members of council is aware, we budget for election on a 4-year cycle. So we take what we normally would budget for an election and we divide it over 4 years, so it doesn't have that huge uptake in our municipal taxes on the election year. But we didn't know if this was going to go through or not, so there'd be maybe additional dollars, as administration mentioned. So we're 100% aware of this. We knew that this would cost us if this did go past, and it did pass, and it may cost us more money.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we knew through organizations that we belong to, but the general public may not have been aware that all of this was coming?
Yeah, it was on TV numerous occasions. Council's had the opportunity to weigh in on a few meetings as well, and we've had opportunity to advocate for not these changes through these organizations as well, and it was highlighted definitely with the presidents of both RMA and Alberta municipalities on TV as well, many times of asking the provincial government not to adopt these changes because they would cost us additional dollars, and also then the amount of time that it would take to hand count all the ballots.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Councilor Meyer?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, and through you to administration. Just in our in the presentation, you spoke of enhanced communication strategies. I'm just curious, as this will be a provincial-wide event, or changes anyhow, if we are planning on piggybacking off of anybody else, if there's, or, I mean, I'm sure that it'll be widely discussed in the news, but if we have already started brainstorming ideas how to inform the public of what they'll need to do.
Go ahead.
Thank you for the question, through your worship, to Councillor Meyer. So we are working with our municipal colleagues across the province and our Municipal Clerks Association to find ways that we can get information out that's in a shared message for things that are pertinent to all electors. But there will be a number of communication pieces that are specific to each municipality, and so we'll work on those as best we can through that process. I would assume that most municipalities will have a lot of communication about the permanent elector register. Everybody's going to be driven to the same location to register for that, so people will hear that on multiple media forms throughout the rest of this year until the election date.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay. Any more questions for clear understanding? Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the presentation this evening. Certainly a lot of unknowns for administration, but for council as well. I appreciate Councillor Meyer's question around sort of the advanced or enhanced, communication. Just wondering, maybe if you could speak to our current practice for notifying residents of an election. I think the Election Act stipulates that it can be notified, residents can be notified through a newspaper or through a notice that's delivered to each resident. And so just looking for just sort of a brief summary of what we're currently doing, unrelated to some of the changes, but just the election in general, to ensure that residents are aware.
Go ahead.
Thank you for the question, through your worship, to Deputy Mayor. So in previous elections, the town has used all traditional media outlets, the newspaper, social media, advertising signs. In the 2021 election, the town also sent out information cards to all addresses within the town. We plan to do all of those same techniques, although we may pivot the information card to a voter card that is a registration process. And we're also looking at doing a bunch of community engagement, getting out in the community, and finding other mechanisms to reach out to community groups to help spread the message on these changes and have our electors prepared.
I appreciate that, and if I may, Mr. Mayor, just a couple of thoughts. I've certainly seen tremendous value in our council booth at Midsummer. We've talked about expanding that, but certainly there's the potential, not to direct this, but for some of these questions to be asked and answered through some of our larger public events, and having municipal staff available to do that. I've heard from some residents, just even in general communication around notices from the town and such, is our sorry, I'm going to back up just a little bit. We've sort of had this push, especially with the disruption to mail delivery to the end of last year, moving online, digital delivery through email of utility bills and that sort of thing. Is there an opportunity there for us to plug some of what we're talking about around the elector registry, the election coming up, to piggyback off of utility bills, or is there something that would prohibit us from sharing information in that manner?
Go ahead.
Thank you for the question, through your worship, to Deputy Mayor. We're definitely looking at those options, and we will be utilizing all options available to us.
Perfect, thank you for that, and not to preach to the choir, but, you know, certainly our right to free election is enshrined in the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and I would strongly suggest that it's a responsibility of every resident in this country and in this community to have that right to vote. You know, we've seen over the years, certainly turnout for elections, maybe not where we would hope it would be, and personally I worry that with some of the added requirements and such that may be prohibitive for some in terms of pursuing or exercising that right and responsibility to vote. And so I certainly appreciate the commentary this evening, what's in our notes in front of us in terms of expanding our communications and our outreach to ensure a seamless and painless process for residents. And, you know, sometimes it's running by with 3 kids on the way home from work that they try to stop and have this accomplished. And any delay to that certainly will impact the voter experience. And so I appreciate the care and concern staff are taking to adjust to the new regulations that are in place. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions for clear and understanding from members of council? Okay. I have a question just to administration. I think you mentioned that you will be receiving a list, a voters list from the provincial government, which I think you mentioned that individuals have to sign up for. So my question is, like, do you have to sign up for if you voted in the last provincial election, because that would be the same depository?
Thank you for the question, through your worship, to all of council. So we are still working through with the province the fine details on that. However, if electors are on that list, we would assume that they are still on that list. But part of our outreach and part of our communication strategy will be encouraging individuals to check and ensure they are on the list in advance of the election, just in case something's changed or there's been any glitches in the system since the last provincial election, just to help with that voter experience.
Okay, thank you. And then just with the paper ballots, I think you mentioned there just be individual ballots. So from my count, you'll have 1 ballot for the mayor, 1 ballot for the councillors, 1 ballot for Parkland School Division, 1 ballot for Evergreen School Division, 1 ballot for Central Nord School Division, plus whatever questions that the provincial government may ask. So you may have a dozen pieces of papers to take you to the voting box. Is that how I understand what's going on here?
Through your worship, to all of council, that would be correct.
Okay, that might be interesting. Okay, and I do not have any more questions. Oh, my question is because I mentioned Central Nord School Division. This is the first election that they're in our community. So has administration reached out to form that collaboration and agreement to run their election for them on their behalf?
Through your worship, to all of council, for the school boards in our area?
Yeah, so I know we have previous agreements with Parkland School Division and Evergreen Catholic Separate School Division, but this will be the first election with Central Nord School Division in our election boundaries.
Thank you for the question, through your worship, to all of council. I have not, but I will make a note to do that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any more questions for clear understanding? Okay, moving on then, we'll go to first reading. Councillor Loynes.
Town Council give first reading to election bylaw 2715/G/25, a bylaw to regulate the conduct of elections in the municipality.
Okay, members of council, you have the presentation. We have some questions for clear and understanding. Any debate on the motion for first reading? Call the question, all in favor? Second reading, Councillor Meyer.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. The Town Council gives second reading to bylaw 2715/G/25.
Okay. Any debate on second reading? Call the question, all in favor? Okay, unanimous consent. Councilor Laurie?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move that council give unanimous consent to consider third reading from election bylaw 2715/G/25.
Okay, thank you. And for those that are new, if council does all three readings in one sitting, there has to be unanimous consent from the members of council that are present. So I'll call the question. All in favor? And for third reading, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move that town council give third reading to bylaw 2715/G/25.
Okay, any questions, comments, and debate on the motion? No. So on behalf of council and the residents, thank you for taking the opportunity to kind of update our elections bylaw so it matches with the provincial government's Bill 20, so that we're not offside of that, so we don't get reprimanded. I do look forward to an interesting election. Definitely going back to the paper days was very interesting. I believe, if I recall my first election, a couple of the counters, because it was late at night, I forgot to carry the one over for me on a couple of events. So after that recount, I actually ended up with way more votes than I did after the announcement came out. So hopefully we're able to get lots of coffee and energy drinks for volunteers, as it will be a long night. So thank you for doing that, and definitely echo the sentiments from members of council of having the enhanced communications. It will be a little learning curve for everyone as we continue to kind of get a better understanding of what Bill 20 means to all the municipalities. Thank you. Call the question. All in favor of third reading? Okay. That is carried. All right, moving on to other business items is number 9. Number 9 is 9.1 is Citizens at Large Board Appointment. Administration?
Thank you, through your worship, to all of council. The report before council addresses a vacancy that remained on the Culture and Tourism Roundtable following the organizational meeting in October. The position was advertised, interviews were conducted, and administration is recommending the vacancy be filled as outlined in the report.
Okay, thank you for the presentation, and thank you for bringing the name forward. Members of council, any questions or comments regarding the presentation and the name that is being proposed? Seeing none, Councillor Hansard with the motion, please.
Mr. Mayor, took a second to review the last name pronunciation. I hope I do it justice. Mr. Mayor, I move that Town Council appoint Hasini Jayasuriya to the Culture and Tourism Roundtable.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hansard, and that's way better than I could have done, so thank you. Members of council, any debate on the motion? Okay, call the question. All in favor? Okay, that is carried. And right now, we'll just take a quick recess as administration turns over a few things so we get set up for the next presentations. Thank you. Okay. Welcome back. And continuing on with our agenda, 9.2, which is the Fire Department Master Plan Update. Go ahead, Administration.
Your Worship and members of council, just briefly want to introduce Jason Nesbitt, our new fire chief, first time in the chambers this evening. This evening, he'll be presenting the master plan. As you recall, last August, administration had the plan update in front of you, and there was a decision made to wait for the new chief to come through and have a bit of an assessment of the fire department and bring the report back to council. So Jason's nearing his 6 months with the department and with the town of Stony Plain, and I'm certain he'll have some information for you in addition to the plan that and questions after if you have. So I'll just let him go through the master plan update for you.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. Pleasure to be with you today as my first time in front of Council. Overall, I just wanted to give a quick comment on my first impressions of the fire department since coming here. One of the things, or some of the things I appreciate about the service since arriving is the strong engagement of the members of the service. We have a very dedicated group of people who are showing up day and night, doing a ton of training and putting in a lot of hours for the town, and they're to be commended. Positive morale around the fire hall does seem to be in a really good place. People are social, they're friendly, they're working as a team on a regular basis and doing some amazing things there. Training-wise, DC Wischuk and our trainers have been leading a phenomenal training program to make sure our firefighters are well-educated and suitably trained in psychomotor skills to deliver a high level of service. And overall, we've noticed is a really strong family culture around the fire hall. And that's something I miss coming to Stony Plain. I came from a larger service with 9 stations, and having that one station with that family culture has been really important. So I just wanted to give you that update for myself as to kind of those initial impressions of the service. So for the master plan, it was completed by Bear Integrated and presented back to council in 2020. There were 16 recommendations within the master plan that came out of it. 13 have been fully completed, and another 3 are currently ongoing on a cyclical basis and reviewed. So I'll just touch on some of the higher level points throughout the process. So recommendation number 1 was to develop a comprehensive structural risk inventory program and establish a cyclical fire inspection program for higher risk life safety occupancies. So this has been completed. Annual inspection cycles are in place. Pre-plans have been developed. We have well over 300 currently filed electronically. Inspections are exceeding the requirement under the Alberta Safety Codes Quality Management Plan. Our team is working collaboratively with building owners, occupants, and our planning department to seek compliance and improve overall fire life safety. Recommendation number 2 was develop a standard of covered policy defining our levels of service. This was completed through Bylaw 2646 PS 21. Section 3.11 provides an overview of the levels of service with a description we are authorized to respond to by council, and in turn what we train to deliver to the residents of the town of Stony Plain. Recommendations 3 and 4 are ongoing. I'll come back to those. Recommendation 5 is complete, reviewing shoot time protocols. So our standard operating guidelines have been adjusted to improve efficiency. Pre-alerting has been added to our paging protocol. So that is one major change that has dominated the efficiency of our fire response. The pre-alerts are, as soon as that 911 call comes into the Parkland Dispatch Center, the dispatchers immediately make a radio call and page to us saying we have an incoming fire call, pre-alert, and that either gets our day staff on the fire truck ready to respond, or our call-in firefighters are already on the way to the fire hall. Once the question and answer is finished with the caller, then the call is officially paged out. By adding that pre-alert ahead of the page, you can save upwards of 5 minutes depending on how long some of the questions or answers are with the calls. One of the things with the pre-alerting is some of our response numbers are difficult to accurately track, because sometimes our shoot time or our time to getting dressed or onto the fire truck is 0, especially on the daytime where they say a pre-alert, we'll get out the door, we'll start moving to that direction before they officially page us, so that time actually doesn't exist in the dispatch system. So overall, our shoot times have greatly improved and we're able to get the trucks out the door way faster. Recommendation number 6 was to establish an efficient and effective center operating guideline to review and, an effective SOP, SOG review and updating procedures. All the documents are now electronic through our Resource One training and records management system, and is available to all members. An annual review update is included, and we have an SOP committee in place now to help review our SOPs and recommend changes back to fire administration. Number 7 was procure a records management and data tracking software package. This was completed in one stage and will be moving to another stage. So we previously and in term right now still have FDM or Fire Department Manager software. We'll be transitioning to a system called First Do, which is a platform integrated into Parkland Dispatch. The existing FDM software is being discontinued at the end of this year. The program's web-based, provides a host of analytic features which are far superior to the current FDM system and will likely replace 3 existing systems. We'll also allow for real-time mobile data transfer and mobile dispatch terminal logging. So what that means is it will help us make our response times more accurate because we'll be able to push a button on a tablet when we're responding or on scene versus having to wait for a dispatcher to answer the radio and log the time. We'll also get real-time update CAD information right to our cell phone. So as the dispatchers are entering notes, we can have that come right to the cell phones and laptops in the truck. That also integrates messaging back and forth between EMS and fire, where we can type back and forth to the computers seamlessly. The procurement was completed by Parkland County, and many Alberta municipalities are currently sliding onto this platform as it's directly tied to Alberta Fire Code and provincial fire reporting. Recommendation 8 is establishing a full-time daytime lieutenant position and administrative support capacity. These positions were both added back in 2021, and the administrative assistant transitioned in the spring of 24 as the previous one left the fire department. Recommendation 9, paid on call or casual training and emergency response consistency. We have an operating procedure for casual response and training performance, so the attendance expectations are in place, and we have a higher frequency of open dialogue between the officers and firefighters. We have regular officers meetings where attendance is discussed, and then those attendance discussions go down into platoon meetings, and everyone's kept accountable for their time at the fire station. Recommendation 10, research retention opportunities and succession planning for senior members. So we've increased opportunities for staff to be actively engaged in operations and training, helps give more ownership to members of the service. Officer development training program has been implemented and recently put into place to help develop and grow some of our newly promoted officers and provide some ongoing training and further supervisory development to our officers within the department. Recommendation number 11, the fire chief establish a transparent and comprehensive promotional policy. All human resource related functions have been completed under town HR policy and procedures. We have a robust promotion policy now, and HR is part of all of our promotion processes to ensure it's fair and equitable. Number 12 was develop a scope of practice and level of service document. This is very similar to recommendation number 2. It touches slightly more on training, and training is planned and delivered around the levels of services listed in the bylaw. Recommendation 13 was enact a fire and life safety bylaw. Again, that's covered in bylaw 2646. Recommendation 15 was formally establish Public Works and Utilities as an emergency response agency for technical rescue. So upon review, Public Works and Utilities does not have this level of training. Edmonton Fire Rescue, or potentially a private contractor if already on site, would be requested to provide this level of service if needed. These are extremely high-risk, low-frequency events that we would have a significant amount of equipment and ongoing training required for to maintain those levels of service. Of note, Parkland County did have a trench rescue this fall near Wadman. They requested Edmonton Fire Technical Rescue. They were responded immediately to assist with that call. So that is well within our area to get that help, and makes for a much more efficient, cost-effective solution to the town, but still maintaining a high level of service. Lastly, on the completed portions, the life cycle replacement policy for fire apparatus is complete and follows town policy for replacement. When we come back to the ongoing items, recommendation number 3 was conduct a comprehensive operational impact and financial review of the Parkland County MOU. So the review of the contract and services provided is occurring annually by both partners and evolves based on mutual need. We have a contract in place that's been extended through December 2025, and we're currently meeting with Parkland County to discuss what that's going to look like moving forward. Recommendation 4 was enhanced fire department receipt of notification protocols. So we worked with dispatch to improve that. We continue to review it and amend it as required. The new mobile dispatch terminal software as it comes online will allow us for greater accuracy of our response targets. And finally, the last recommendation is to closely monitor the use of mutual aid calls with the medical first responder program. Regular review with AHS is continuing, and the fire department service levels priorities are maintained through this process. Automatic response protocols with AHS have been recently reviewed and updated as well. That concludes the overview of the Fire Services Master Plan update. And Mayor Choi or Council, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
All right. Thank you for the presentation and like highlighting how you highlighted the things that we've completed and things that are still ongoing. So members of council, questions for clear understanding. Councillor Hansard, go ahead.
Your Worship, through to the fire chief, I really appreciated the update, well, I don't know if it was an update, but the overview of the response times. A question that I had, I know originally when Brickyard was created, it was determined by, I believe, our fire chief of the day, that the response time was not fast enough to allow side windows on any of the duplex units in Brickyard Bend or Savannah, and I'm not sure about Brickyard Place North, the two-story duplexes. Would anything have changed now? Because the determination was, because the fire department is south of the railroad tracks, you don't always know how long it's going to take for fire trucks to get north of the railroad tracks to go to Brickyard. But now we have a south access that also happens to provide access to the new school, Westview School, and to the recreation center under construction. Would anything have changed in that particular neighborhood regarding response times?
Go ahead, Chief.
Your Worship, through to Councillor Hansard, the overall response change haven't changed dramatically. Having that second access point certainly gives us another option should the train be present. As the town continues to grow more to the west, it's going to make it a little more challenging to meet some of those times. But during the daytime especially, we can easily meet the under 10-minute response time requirement. And after hours, we're not far off that 10-minute response time requirement, but I'm still having ongoing discussions with GM Hill about reviewing that. We're looking at data right now to potentially bring back to see if there is a possibility of making some enhancements or whether we need to stay where we're at with our development processes.
So am I understanding that as far as you know, the response times probably haven't changed that much? But I know that there are some people who have put side windows in their units, and I don't know if they were permitted or not, but it seems to me that if they weren't permitted when the units were built, but they're there now, I just wonder if perhaps planning and infrastructure is aware of those units that now have side windows, which could pose a threat to the neighboring units.
Okay.
Should there be a fire?
Thank you, Councillor Hansard. I believe that goes down to fire rating. So in the past, what happens is that it wasn't that they could not put side windows down there. It is the fact that they needed the side windows to provide a certain fire rating, which means it was an increased cost in terms of the type of windows you can put in there. So it was a kind of maybe a business decision for those developers not to put the side windows in. And then it's also similar to the sprinklers in their buildings as well. I think some duplexes went every other duplex to sprinkle them to reduce the cost, and others went to every duplex.
But if there were no sprinklers installed, but the windows are there, I guess the assumption might be that maybe the permits were granted because the response time is better. And I was just curious if that's true.
Okay. In terms of response times,
Your worship, maybe just a couple of quick comments on that. So notwithstanding the, response times or what have you, there's a number of ways for a builder to address the high-intensity residential fire regs and codes. I don't know that I'd go into all the detail of them, but I can assure council that anything out there would have been permitted and built to a standard that meets those requirements in one way or the other. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the comments. The point is, how the builder does it is one thing. What people do aftermarket is the other issue that might be of concern.
Great. Yeah, thank you for bringing that, Councillor Hansard.
Thank you.
To Councillor Meyer, please.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Fire Chief, thank you for the presentation. It answered most of the questions I had, although in your presentation, you made me think of one here. Just number 7, when it speaks of the procurement of record management and data tracking, and we are sharing the software license with Parkland County, I'm just curious if you could speak to sort of contingency, if Parkland County goes with another program, how would that position us? Or say if our memorandum of understanding changed or anything like that?
Through your worship to Councillor Meyer, the software system is actually, the Parkland County put together a process, but in turn, once they completed the process, they've carved out a chunk for us. So we have our own portion of it, that is the town of Stony Plains under our own contract, and Parkland County has their own as well. So we have access to both the town of Stony Plains side and Parkland County side. So they are distinct and separate under a similar platform, and we pay for our own, if that makes sense. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Laurie.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Chief Nesbitt, for the presentation this evening. Questions in regards to it. You mentioned, and the report mentions obviously about the MOU with Parkland County, but it doesn't speak much in regards to the mutual aid agreement with the City of Spruce Grove and the ongoing growth of the department. And so I'm just curious if you can shed a little bit of light as kind of the move forward in respect to that. We did see when corporate plan came forward this year that there are a few, benchmark positions in the corporate plan for the following years, and I would make a presumption based on that it's looking at an expansion of service hours and so on and so forth, but we don't really have a good picture. Council hasn't really been painted a picture of what that looks like yet. And so I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit to what we saw in corporate plan, the intention behind some of those positions, as well as the partnership with the City of Spruce Grove and any consideration of, an expansion or an inclusion of that partnership as operational.
Okay, go ahead.
Your Worship, through to Councillor Laurie. So certainly through the corporate plan, over the last 6 years, I would suggest, we've had increased fire services resources in the corporate plan. The next iteration of the corporate plan that was approved last year certainly has 2 resources in 26 and 27 to continue with the evolution of our department and that ultimate goal of 30,000 people and providing that primary service to 30,000 people. With respect to what that might do to our department, it's, again, we just had a bit of a brief conversation about high-intensity residential fires and the regulations and the safety code requirements of that in our current community with respect to not being able to achieve a 600 second, which is 10 minutes or less, 90% of the time to fires in our community. With the extra resources, that's another component to how can we help mitigate that so that it allows a bit more of an opportunity flexibility for our developers in our community. With respect to the City of Spruce Grove, typically speaking, in most municipalities, you do have a mutual aid agreement with your partner in communities just in case you get to that unfortunate circumstance where your resources are far outnumbered with the number of calls or the calls to service that you might have from time to time. Certainly when you look at the structures that are being built in both of our communities, we do a lot of mutual aid back to the City of Spruce Grove in terms of we have a ladder truck. It's very difficult for departments to have 2 ladder trucks in their department. City of Edmonton has multiple apparatus that are able to be deployed dependent on the call in their particular jurisdiction. Just surely the volume and size of that community permits them that opportunity. Mutual aid agreements in the region certainly provide that same or a similar opportunity for other communities without having to have that resource within their own fire halls, and often sitting, not being used to their full benefit. Is there a time in the future where our two departments might be closer or more aligned and there might be a different arrangement? Certainly, I don't think those conversations are active at this point. I think if you look across the board with all of our services, because they're not that far away from us, there's likely opportunity for us to continue to have conversations about what is the right sizing in terms of an ultimate change to the delivery of our service in our community related to fire or any other service that has a bit of alignment with City of Spruce Grove. Transit is a pretty good example of, we don't run our own transit service, they run a service on behalf of the entire region, but we do have a local service, accessible transit service that we do operate on behalf of the City of Spruce Grove too. So I think from time to time, there's opportunity for us to partner, and there's time where the autonomous service is still important for both communities. I don't believe we're at that juncture where, hard and fast conversation related to fire services is on top of mind, but certainly adding resources is more targeted to our own community, helping developers have more options with respect to the product they provide to our residents, and that 30,000 achievement that we have in our corporate plan.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Appreciate that answer. And I think, you highlighted especially that ultimate goal of the blue sky of 30,000 and understanding, with Spruce Grove being a neighbor, they're only at 40,000 right now. We understand we have very different departments in relation to operating staff and how that's run. And so I'd be curious to see and interested to see some more information come forward in the future about what is the plan as we move forward in the next 5 to 10 years. Are we looking at a transition to 24/7 full-time coverage? Are we looking to still be complemented by paid on calls or transitioning to straight full-time staff? And trying to get that understanding, because ultimately that's going to be a very large operational expense to the council of the day when that does come forward, and that's going to take some significant future planning. And if we're looking at that as a 5 to 10 year possibility, I would like to think that there'd be some things that we should maybe be starting to do today or in the next year or two to prepare for that, to prepare to add that. And obviously seeing those positions in the corporate plan is something that I appreciate seeing. The last question that I had was just in relation to Parkland County and the MOU that we have with them. Obviously, the understanding is District 3 is a fairly large service area, and in the time in the last several years, Parkland County has opened the Parkland County West Fire Station in Wabamun, and I believe, if I understand correct, they actually have some full-time day staff there. Has that made any changes in relation to the response in District 3, or is there any consideration of a smaller response area? Because as we see our numbers, surprisingly this year for 2024, they dropped for our call volume from 2023, which was interesting to see. We don't typically see a drop, but it's still quite substantial. And I do get the question from residents as to what happens when we have a call in Parkland County. Now, I know we use our mutual aid, and we can't explain that, but I'm just wondering if you can kind of talk about how they're moving forward from an operational model and how that may impact our service in District 3.
Sure. Your Worship, through to Councillor Laurie. Overall, the boundaries with Parkland County are fairly static. From the information I've gathered since I've been here, from time to time, the boundaries may change slightly, or automatic aid to certain districts may alter based on population response capacities at the stations, et cetera. However, that may evolve over time. As far as I'm aware, the county is looking at generally who is the closest or the fastest to meet those requirements. So they have added daytime staffing to Wabamun, similar to what we have in Stony Plain. I don't think they quite have the same staffing complement as we do. But for example, they are utilizing Tomahawk a little bit more for backup in the Wabamun district once they've run some analytics to determine who's going where, closer, faster. So that may reduce some of our volume. But on the other hand, our district within the county is the largest populated district within Parkland County. So we see the highest levels of calls for service within their region. Overall, that number, from what I've seen, is quite stable. It has dipped slightly. Our numbers are down last year by quite a few calls, but I think it's generally related to the weather. It's just one of those things you can't predict, whether you have bad weather and icy roads or it's not a nice winter. You don't have crashes, and you get a little bit of rain in the spring, and we don't have those spring fires as well. So I think it's all ties back into the weather. But overall, with the mutual aid to other districts, I can see right now, based on some research and analytics that have gone through the department and speaking with DC Woodchuck, our backup to other districts has slowed down, maybe not substantially, but as Parkland's increasing service, it's taking a little bit of pressure off of us. Parkland's currently undergoing a master plan review right now as well, and I think that'll obviously have a bunch of recommendations that will come out that may alter our relationship over the longer term if there's more recommendations for them to increase their service levels.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilor Pletchko?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Chief Nesbitt, for coming in today. A pleasure to meet you for the first time, and glad that you're a part of our community and doing a great job for looking after our fire department. As I read through the report, there was a number of things that just kept crossing my mind, and I'm really glad we have an update tonight. But it doesn't really speak to what has been done. You know, yes, we've done this, but what is the result? And I'll go to a reference. So observation number 9 on page 97 of 287. It talks about the amount of activity you have at the fire hall for training. And it uses specific numbers, so 33%. And if we have an average of 40 firefighters, that's about 12 firefighters that are participating in that. Earlier, you made reference to better training, more people showing up. So what does that number look like today? If you had to put a number on here, what would that number look like today?
So, Your Worship, through to Councillor Pletchko, and I think you're referring to just attendance standards? That's what you're referring to with that number?
Participating in training.
Yeah. So, obviously, this document's just a little over 5 years old now, so we're kind of dated from some of it. But what I'm seeing right now is we're striving for to have members hit 50% of training attendance and 20% of emergency call volume. Now we're flexible as well, right? So from month to month, we expect that to. Some people can easily hit that, some people we can't. If you're a shift worker, we understand that. We're trying to find other opportunities to engage you, and we've done some separating of call responses to include crew paging. With some calls, we're getting 20 people turning out for alarm calls. So does that make the most effective use of all of our resources? So we're trying to adjust some of that paging down and trading folks between, so let's say, for example, it's not your week for your crew to be on call for the lower acuity calls. If you're a shift worker and you were out of town for your previous week, well, then come in on the other crews and pick up some time. But we're trying to find that balance to give folks that work-life balance with the fire hall, their full-time job and their family, but also meet those training and attendance targets. But specifically around training, we're looking for that 50% to training attendance and just ongoing coaching and conversations with folks if they're experiencing challenges with training. What can we do differently to help them with that? And from what I've seen since I've come here is that's been well received. And we're having strong engagement from folks to the point where I think tonight we have 34 people at training tonight on the list.
Thank you. If I could.
Go ahead.
So I'm going to take this one step further then, because most of the recommendations, you made a good point, and that was the point that I was trying to get at is most of the recommendations were a 6 to 12 month recommendation. We're into almost year 5 of this report. Well, I understand some things have changed at the fire hall and some stuff like that, which may have delayed a little bit of stuff. We're really at a report that is well outdated. And for us at council, or for myself at council, to have something that would give us the next steps for this fire department, I think it's, and maybe this is a question for administration, maybe when will the next report be brought out so we can see just how much of the progress has actually happened here? Have we gone forward? Have we gone backwards? And where do we sit within the next 5 years, and how do we achieve that goal? So is there a plan to bring this forward in the next little bit where we will see an updated version of this that'll actually tell us where we sit?
Go ahead, General Manager.
Your Worship, through the Councillor Pletchko. So really, if you look through this 16 recommendations were very administrative in process. Generally speaking, the report said our department was functioning well. There's some things that we needed to consider, look at, and improve upon. Tonight's report was to report back to say that we've achieved those. There's 3 that will continue to be ongoing because we have to continue dealing with AHS, so I don't think we're going to solve that particular one with a complete or a check mark because we continue to do medical calls. There's continual change with AHS, with our provincial government, so there will continue to be a role that we have to play unless we decide to back out of that 100%. So the three that we've got there, and we'll always have a mutual aid agreement with someone. We definitely, through the county, because we're responding and providing them a level of service, there will be some sort of operational or response agreement with them. So certainly, I think the other 13, really, we're coming back to council just to close a loop on the report that was completed. I think if we were to look at a different report, it certainly would not look the same as this. We might likely go to someone that has a bit more objectivity to operations in itself and not fire specific personnel. And we might look at something similar to what we had with when we transitioned the RCMP detachment for Spruce Grove and Stony Plain into one. We hired KPMG, which are basically, they look at business and they look at the recommendations around, this is a business, how do you move this thing forward related to some outcomes that you're trying to achieve. So those are questions that we continue to ask at the administrative level and what the timing looks like in terms of doing a report of that nature. I think at this point, we're very comfortable with the service levels that we're providing our community in terms of being able to address the various emergencies that exist in our community. We can sit here with confidence to tell you that we are achieving and meeting that with a high level of service. The expectations that Parkland County has of us to serve their District 3 under the prescribed agreement, we're certainly meeting that to a high degree too and a high level of professionalism. Because of our operational model in terms of casual and full-time, from time to time we do have some challenges with people may choose not to be able to commit to the fire department from a casual consistency. However, this year's recruitment, we had 80 people apply for 10 positions. So certainly I think there's been some improvement or some increased interest with our residents with respect to being part of the department or giving back to the community in a way of which the fire department does. Certainly I think we see our department out at a lot of community events, and that may have helped with that overall recruitment drive with respect to just that general giving back versus always responding to the worst parts of people's days. So I guess to answer the question, something like this, certainly we're having those debates and those conversations with respect to, but I wouldn't suggest it would come back and look at a surface level review of our fire department operations as it is today. It would be a little bit more detailed, seek some bigger outcomes and look at that 30,000 and perhaps have some more projection about staffing, fire halls, apparatus, how we compare to those across Alberta. The union certainly is a big conversation at Mid-City Mayor's Caucus. The overall expense related to fire is increasing. Part of our conversation on a daily basis is how do we continue to offer a model that is cost-effective to our residents and provide the service that council expects under the fire services bylaw. So those are the things that we're constantly speaking about administratively and bringing in a master plan. I think the timing is something that we have to, it's expensive. And sometimes the recommendations are expensive also. So the timing of that is a balance that we'll continue to talk about and bring through the corporate plan process.
Your Worship, if I could maybe add a couple of comments for context as well onto that, certainly. You know, typically any kind of a plan is going to have a shelf life-ish of anywhere from 3 to 7 years, give or take. We're kind of right in the middle of that now, as I understand, looking at the dates involved here. But I would offer to council that I would think that, you know, the next level or wave of council direction or information or, interaction would be amongst on some of the, I would say, a bit of the higher level questions. Getting into this particular and specific report, it's pretty detailed. It goes right into a whole lot of specifics. I'm not sure that would be the next reporting framework that council would be directly involved with. Some questions tonight related to 5 years out, how do we fit within the region? Where is our broad direction going? What does council want to see as it relates to total overall investment into the fire services? And what are those kind of questions would be where I would see some of the dialogue with council, as opposed to a much more detailed and specific report in this manner. So just to a question as to, when does this get reviewed or relooked at or what have you, I would say likely within the next couple of years, but the questions may be different and the framework that council would be involved with might be different.
Thank you. Anything else? Councillor Fletchko? Okay. Any more questions for clear understanding? Okay, go ahead, Deputy Mayor first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Fire Chief Nesbitt, for being here. It's a question for you. Is it Chief Nesbitt or Fire Chief Nesbitt?
Chief Nesbitt's fine.
Nesbitt, all right. Just want to make sure I'm using the proper terminology. Certainly appreciate the questions from my colleagues this evening, and your presentation as well answered a number of questions, but I would never pretend to be an expert in fire services. My questions would always be, do we have the staff we need and the equipment we need to provide a safe level of service for our community? And there were a couple of things that stood out to me as I read through the report that's before us. And so, Mr. Mayor, I do have a couple of questions here. On page 143, it's noted under paid on-call firefighters, the second last paragraph there, again, this is 2020, and so just looking for some context today, that the Stony Plain Fire Department has experienced some challenges responding to evening, weekend, and holiday calls. And so just looking for some general comments if that continues to be true, and some general comments as well on the recruitment, retention, and activation of our paid on call. I know you spoke a little bit about that, but just if we've been able to make some gains in this area.
Sure, Your Worship, through to Deputy Mayor Anderson. Overall, my impression since I've arrived here is we are able to make those response benchmarks and manage several calls at a time. I think we've had one instance since I've been here where we've had 3 calls on the go at the same time, and we've been able to manage that. About every 9 days, we have 2 calls for service at the same time. We've been able to manage those. During the daytime, I believe we're adequately staffed between the 5 on shift, plus the deputy chief and myself, if we need to back it up. If we don't have that casual membership available during the day, we're able to sustain 2 trucks during the day. And after hours, we typically have, we do have an officer on call every day. We've implemented a apparatus operator on call where we can get one out as well, where we've, through our crew paging, we found some cost efficiencies to help provide that apparatus operator. And then on long weekends and summer weekends, we have standby on-call crews as well. So when you combine all that together with our recruitment numbers, I think we have a robust system in place right now that is adequately able to serve the residents of Stony Plain and Parkland County. We're able to ensure our trucks are going out the door. We're not missing calls. We do have healthy relationships with both Parkland County and Spruce Grove for backup whenever we need it. And from my lens, I think we're in a good shape at the moment. Over time, as things change and as the community grows, we will always need to look at what's next in the future and how things change for the town or how busy folks are. This month, I think we just hit about 60 calls today, so we're going out just a little over 2 times a day right now on average, which is consistent with last January. When it comes, you mentioned equipment, our equipment I think is excellent for the type of fire service we have, and taking my experience into account for what I see here is we're well supported by council, the community, with the equipment we need to provide the service, and we have the right number of people right now. Should that change moving forward, recruitment becomes more of a challenge, response becomes more of a challenge, I'd be working with GM Hill to bring those concerns back forward to yourselves. But as of today, I think we're in good shape.
I like to hear good shape. As the fire expert, good shape sounds good to me. Just to take one step further, if I may, Mr. Mayor, equipment-wise, specifically speaking to our vehicles that exist over at the fire hall, one of the things that stood out as I looked through the description of what's available was, I believe, the newest outside of sort of command response vehicles, I guess I would call them, the pickup trucks and SUVs and that sort of thing, the actual engines and ladder trucks and that sort of thing themselves. The newest one was 2015, I believe, and so maybe just some quick comments. I don't know the lifespan of a fire engine. I don't know sort of its service life, but the newest one's 9 years, and then we've got some going 25, 26 years, and so just some general comments, if you wouldn't mind, on the equipment that we have available to our firefighters.
Sure, through your worship to Deputy Mayor Anderson. Our newest apparatus is our frontline engine. I believe it's a 2020. So that puts us in good shape. There's a couple factors we need to look at. Number one is our replacement cycle for our apparatus that's in town policy and our partnership with the county. So apparatus are typically fire engines. We'll see the service for 20 years. Within that, there's another layer we look at is the fire underwriter survey as it pertains to insurance ratings for the community. So frontline service for an engine or a pumper is 15 years of frontline service, followed by another 5 years of second out service. Past that, you can't get a rating anymore. For a ladder truck, it's 20 years of frontline service, 5 years reserve service, and then looking at replacement as well. So our current replacement cycles fall in line with that. The rescue trucks, the light vehicles, brush trucks, they don't factor into that insurance rating, so it's based on whatever policy the town's setting and or how they're partnering with the county on apparatus. And again, overall, my assessment is we're in really good shape for vehicles. We do have 2 light vehicles that'll be cycled out this year, and that as of right now with the 2 fire engines we have, we're always able to replace one every 10 years, so that first truck that's always out the door is never older than 10 years. Service as long as we maintain that, and then we still have the ladder truck beyond that for the town that also falls within that to help with that insurance rating for the town.
So good shape would apply.
Absolutely, good shape does apply for the apparatus. We have our maintenance is well looked after between Deputy Chief Wychuk, our town shop, and the county shop. They're on top of making sure our trucks are very well maintained and ready to respond.
Perfect. And I appreciate the update on the 2020 truck. That's not in the report we have here, so that must have been after 2020, I would assume.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have one that's been replaced, Councillor Laurie, just let me know. Thank you for that. Further, if I may, Mr. Mayor, I'm on page 151. This speaks to the physical division of Spruce Grove and the town of Stony Plain by the CN Railway tracks. I believe Councillor Hansard asked a question to this effect as well, but it happens to be, I would say, the number one question I get from residents related to emergency services in our community, with where our fire station is located, what happens when there's a train and they can't get to the other side of the tracks. And one of the things that GM Hill, I've heard from some of my colleagues who have been a part of the town of Stony Plain fire contingent, was to speak to the mutual aid agreements with Spruce Grove. One of the things that I read here, though, gave me a little bit of pause, and I don't know if it's just semantics for wording, but it speaks to an informal understanding with those other municipalities. And when it comes to safety, when I hear informal understanding, I tend to be a little bit concerned without any more context or information there. And so is this something that has now been incorporated into our mutual aid agreements, where we have that agreement with Spruce Grove, who's on the other side of the tracks, to respond if we can't? Why would it be referred to as informal in the context of our report here?
Through your worship, through to Deputy Mayor Anderson. So the way we have it set up is through dispatch protocols. So it's not necessarily listed in our mutual aid agreement with Spruce Grove. We have protocols set up with Spruce Grove through the dispatch center that automatically trigger that next level of response. So if we have a prolonged train blockage, they will automatically dispatch out Spruce Grove to Stony Plain, or vice versa, Stony Plain to Spruce Grove to the industrial park on the other side of the tracks. Same goes for any working structure fire. As soon as we have a working fire or basically something showing an active fire, either Spruce Grove gets dispatched to Stony Plain, or Stony Plain automatically gets dispatched to Spruce Grove. And those calls have been refined from my understanding over the last few years, where it was a little more all the time now to where it's confirmed, then that trigger's pulled, and it's a very reciprocal number back and forth that evens out.
Thank you for that. So certainly, just to summarize, if I could, not necessarily outlined in the mutual aid agreement, but the protocols exist to ensure that the appropriate vehicles are being dispatched to ensure both sides of the railroad tracks in Spruce Grove and Stony Plain are being serviced in appropriate time.
Yes, through your worship to Councillor Anderson, or Deputy Mayor Anderson, yes, that's correct. It is through those protocols that is generated, and our fire officer on call can make any decision at any time to activate those resources sooner if they're required.
Perfect. I do have one more, Mr. Mayor. It's a quick one.
Okay, go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you. Turning to page 190 for my colleagues, looking at the second bullet point here. It just speaks to the number of fire calls in Stony Plain on a 5-year average, and suggests that we're, I'll quote, well above the average of comparative communities. And so my curiosity is that within Stony Plain itself, is that due to our mutual aid agreements with Parkland County and Spruce Grove, what might account to a well above average number of fire calls in a 5-year period?
Through your worship to Deputy Mayor Anderson, I can't speak to the context of the past, obviously, because I don't have that local experience. What I can speak to is what I've seen since I've been here. I would say we're no more above what I would expect for this size and type of community. We do have busy times, we do have slower times, but I say on average, we're probably comparable, again, between us and Spruce Grove. We hear their calls across the radio as well. I don't think there's much of a difference. Not all fires are created equal as well. So when we're reporting a fire, for example, we had a magic bag on fire in a microwave the other day. It's contained in the microwave, that still gets classified as a structure fire. So versus I have a dryer fire that's got out into the residential area, the occupancy that we've had to fight back and extinguish. So just because it's reported as a structure fire call doesn't necessarily mean that the severity is there, or that we have a number that's higher than other comparable municipalities, as if that kind of makes sense with my thinking.
No, and I do appreciate that. Not a year here yet, I don't think, and so appreciate that statistics going back to, I would guess, 2015, 2014, potentially would be hard to speak to. I will look to GM Hill. Would you have anything to add for that specifically in terms of a well above average number of fires going back 2015 to 2020? So that was page 190, the second bullet.
Your worship, through to Councillor Anderson, certainly I'd have to dig back into the context of who they looked at and if they have a response similar to ours in terms of we're doing Division 3 with Parkland County. So do the comparables have a mutual aid agreement, or sorry, an operational agreement similar where they're covering not just their own community but a larger community too? So would have to look back and just make sure that we're comparing. I would assume that we're comparing apples to apples, but sometimes, the difficulty with our municipal setting is my specific position in another community might not be doing exactly the same things that I'm doing. So until you get into the details and look specifically to ensure that same is same, sometimes the numbers can be altered slightly. I think 227 for an average call per year for a fire department seems quite low, in my opinion. That's not a lot of calls for a fire department. Certainly ours were, pushing into that 600. But as Chief Nesbitt articulated, some of those are 30 seconds long. Some of them are 30 hours long. So there's a wide spectrum with respect to the severity of the call and the amount of resources required for a particular call.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think the context here was specific to fire calls. The other bullets are call volume, medical calls, that sort of thing. And so if we tallied those up, it would probably be 550, something like that. But Chief Nesbitt, thank you. Welcome to Stony Plain. Thank you, GM Hill, and to my colleagues on council, thank you for your patience as I learned some new things today about our fire department. So appreciate that.
Thank you. And if council is curious about the comparative municipalities, that's on page 191 of the agenda package, where it kind of breaks it down to total call volume to fire-related and also EMS-related calls as well. So I think that's a good question to ask because, how are we comparing that? So.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm actually going to look to our CRO or GM Hill. I did forget one thing. Under your predecessor, Chief Nesbitt, there was a conversation about having council over to the fire hall for a bit of a tour. It's something I haven't done, to just see your space and what you do. Now that you're in our community and had some time to get settled, I would love an opportunity to come over and see what you guys get up to over at the fire hall. So I'll look to our CAO to maybe arrange something for us.
Thank you, Your Worship. We can see what we can do. I know I was over there for some I don't know if it was pancakes, but it was some juice boxes, and they were flying out off the table. So I know, I'm presuming we'll have another open house at that point too, which Again, I think there was something mentioned earlier that, we can open up the doors a little bit over there. I think that was a good thing. I enjoyed myself, and there was a ton of people over there. And Your Worship, that's as good a day as any for council to go over there and learn about, see, enjoy, and experience it with the rest of the community as well, so.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you. Any more questions for clear understanding? Okay, now we're going to the second round. Go ahead, Councillor Hanson.
Was this second round?
Yes, I went to you first.
Oh, well, I can't remember. It was so long ago. Thank you, Your Worship. A thought came to my mind, and I'm glad some of the other comments and questions were asked by council. I had to remind myself several times reading through this really long report that this was a 2020 report. So if the public is looking online and they want to dig through any of this, it's 5 years ago, because this was put out in January 2020 and researched even prior to that to come up with the numbers to put in the report for January 2020. The thing that I wondered is, for instance, on page 187, we have two tables, and it refers to our comparators. And some of these are comparators we use for other things like council remuneration. Others are not. Stony Plain, Beaumont, Camrose, Sylvan Lake, Brooks, Squamish, and Swift Current. I don't think we normally see Squamish and Swift Current, but those were in here twice, and it had to do with our budget, how much we spend per capita, and so forth. So that's the municipal budget allotment to the department versus our population, and that population just haunts me, because I know we're bigger than 17,842 now, and we won't get another population number till sometime, probably a year, after the next federal census. Mr. Mayor, would you remind us when the next federal census is? You always have that answer right off the top of your head.
Yeah, I think they do it every 4 years, so I think the last one was...
Is it every 4?
It is every 4 years. But then I think the results get released in the 5th year. So the last census was, what, 2019? Can you confirm
Well,
that?
they're late. I thought it was 7 years, but anyway, we've got a long way to go, and then it will, after the next federal census, then we'll wait at least a year to get numbers, and then a new set of numbers can be plugged in there. Maybe 20,000 people, 21,000, somewhere in there maybe, and that budget of the year will be bigger, and the council of the day will be making decisions on the things that are required based on all those new numbers. The public may not follow it from year to year, so they get hit with it when we come in here, and we've got a report that if they want to dig through about 100 and some odd pages of council package, they can read it all. I appreciate all the information that's given. The numbers are different today than they are here, but we're using a 5-year-old report based on data gathered over a longer period of time than that. So I would just say, when people look at this and say, well, 4% of our municipal budget is going to the fire department, how in the world will we afford to be adding full-time firefighters? These numbers are not speaking to the current day. So we have to keep all of that in mind, and this was just a moment for me to say, don't lose your marbles over that to the general public, because all of these numbers will shift again. Population will be bigger, budget will be bigger, and the percentage of municipal budget may be bigger, maybe smaller. But I think that the fire department overall does an amazing job with what the town is able to provide. Thank you for all your service, and please take that home to all the other firefighters. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your comment, Councilor Hansard. Any other questions, comments for clarity from members of council? Councilor Lowry?
Thank
Thank you, Your Worship, and this is just more a comment. We've got an item coming up in our agenda, the 2024 fourth quarter report, and I'm not sure whether Chief Nesbitt was sticking around, so I just wanted to highlight the activities of Fire Prevention Week that the Fire Department undertook this year. I think that's the first year I've seen that level of fire prevention in the community in a very, very long time, and it was a resounding success. It was talked about throughout the entire community. It really got people talking, and what shocks me is reading this report and finding that the fire alarm campaign that you did to find that 1/3 of residents did not have working smoke detectors. That is crazy. That just blows my mind that in what I would call a relatively modern community like Stony Plain, that we could have 1/3 of our residents that do not have a working smoke alarm. And so kudos to you and your department for going out there, because I don't know how many houses that 1/3 that you found equated to, but now those members of our community are so much better protected because of the work of the fire department. And that's a prevention aspect that's huge, because I would much rather see you guys out there doing that than having to respond to a scenario where you're potentially having to pull somebody out because they didn't get an alarm telling them that they needed to get out of the house. So kudos to your department. Thank you so much for all the work that you did in Fire Prevention Week this past year, and I can't wait to see what you guys do this year. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Councilor Lorry. Any other questions for clear understanding or comments? Okay. See none, thank you. Members of Council, you guys asked some great questions for some clarity and understanding. I do have, I gotta see which ones were asked. I do have one that I don't think was asked. So in terms of the current numbers of full-time firefighters that we have currently, at what point in time can we actually shift it to having full-time coverage for the majority of the day? Because right now we have coverage from 8 to 4:30 more or less. And then after that, it's paid on call with supports. But that's also one of the times that we're actually lacking, was when we paid on call. The shoot time's a little bit longer, the response time's a little bit longer, which doesn't allow us to meet the HERF regulations. So at what scenario of how many full-time employees do we need to actually have that 24-hour coverage?
Your Worship, Jim Hill and I have been discussing this basically since I've arrived on what that looks like and how the positions in the corporate plan that are identified would contribute to service efficiencies within the fire department. Right now, the struggle exists between being able to put 2 trucks out the door during the day, or do we add those services to weekends and evenings? So we're back and forth on that right now. So I can't say I have a solid answer for you. I have to say that it's under review. We're currently discussing it. There may be benefit as we add positions to look at bringing the other positions in Monday to Friday to free up us to focus more, myself and Deputy Chief Wichuk, to focus more administratively on administrating the fire service versus responding to emergencies, because quite often I speak to GM Hill and I'll be in a meeting with him and I gotta go. I gotta get on the truck because we don't have enough staff to cover this one. Versus in the weekend and evening, that's I don't need, or myself, Deputy Chief Wichuk doesn't necessarily need to be getting on the trucks because we have that response capacity. So if we look at bringing on staff and looking at 7-day a week, 10 or 12-hour shifts to cover half that time, or whether we consolidate that into supporting more weekday staffing, or if we look at a hybrid model, we're eventually, as the town grows, we're going to have to add positions and grow towards that model. The nice thing is that we do have that strong interest in our casual program, and that way, as long as it's working, which it is right now, we're able to sustain what we have with some additions over time to give us that breathing room to grow as a community, to grow as a fire service, to make it more palatable to the taxpayer. But over time, we'll need to add those positions to grow the service. I think as it stands right now, will we get out of the HERF requirements with our casual pool? Not necessarily, but we're close. So that's a decision, again, that comes down to council with that on what they're prepared to look at through that. But I think overall we're generally in good position, and we're just going to need to incrementally move forward as the community grows to expand the service.
Okay, thank you. Another question is, in terms of our contract with the Parkland County Dispatch Center for our call-outs, is that a long-term contract or is that a short-term contract?
Yeah, Your Worship, I'd look at GM Hill because I can't remember the date on it, but I think they're probably 5-year agreements.
Your Worship, certainly, yeah, we do have a defined timeline with them. They're also a provincial 911 call center, so the likelihood of us not signing a contract with them would probably be detrimental in respect to everyone dials 911 for an emergency. So until they don't become a call center, we likely will continue with a contract with them.
Okay. Good, I'm glad to hear that, because I think we've heard many stories as the provincial government centralizes a lot of the call centers. People are answering emergency calls that don't know anything about the local area and trying to send and direct traffic. Plays a big role in terms of community safety, so I'm glad that along as that the Parkland Dispatch Center is a registered center, we'll continue to do business with them.
Your Worship, I can add that Parkland Dispatch has fully moved forward with NG 911. They're fully prepared to move on to what the next phase of dispatch looks like, and they provide us with an excellent service. And overall, from the fire service perspective, we're very happy with what the dispatchers do for us on a daily basis.
Okay, thank you. And then in terms of cost-effective services for residents, and I understand trying to make sure that provide the best service with the number of dollars we have. Have we ran a scenario where we've contracted Spruce Grove to be the first responders in the evening service? So do we, like, for example, they're fully stocked, they're there 24/7. So if we give them a call-out fee, like, I'm not too sure how that balances out. That's probably a little different than mutual aid because we're both responding to each other, but when we actually want them to respond to us, is there like a scenario that's ran through how much time can we save, how much will it cost us, versus how much would it cost us to get more full-time members to provide that service?
Your Worship, certainly the answer is no. We have not contemplated what that would look like. I would suggest we have an overall staffing budget at the fire department, and certainly as we continue to talk about the ultimate scenarios that service our community, we would likely be looking at that ultimate number to ensure that the best interests financially are being met for our community. So likely is something we can take back and discuss with them. I would assume that that would change their service level to some degree, and there would be some impact on their side that they would have to analyze and get back to us with some commentary on what that might look like.
I definitely appreciate that conversation with our member and staff, and then back with members of council. As I think Councillor Hanser mentioned, we're continuing to grow. So looking at different ways of providing a service that may be more cost effective, and maybe it's not, and maybe that we need to continue just to increase the number of paid full-time firefighters versus paid on call. So that's a fine balance. Thank you. That is all the questions that I had that were not asked. Members of council, any more questions for clarity and understanding? Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for answering those questions.
Thank you, Worship.
Okay, looking at Councillor Pletchko for the motion, please.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. The Town Council accept the Fire Department Master Plan update for information.
Members of council, any questions, comments, and debate on the motion? Call the question, all in favor? That is carried. Moving on to 9.3, which is the emergency management update. So we do have emergency management, and it's always good to refresh ourselves and our public's understanding and knowledge of what happens. Go ahead, administration.
Your Worship, members of council, certainly this is the annual update that we provide council on the previous year's emergency management activities. So just a quick refresher, oversight is provided by the Government of Alberta. The Alberta Emergency Management Agency is the agency that provides that overall oversight to us in terms of our day-to-day business with the provincial government. There is some legislation in play, so Emergency Management Act, Local Authority Emergency Management Regulation. The second one is the one that we pay more attention to. The one is the Emergency Management Act is a larger, more encompassing. The local authority is the one that basically provides us with the detail as to what our emergency management plan should look like, who should be involved, and some of the day-to-day or the annual duties that we should undertake. Local oversight, so we have the emergency management plan that has an annual review. We do review that administratively. We also have the provincial government that comes through and looks through our plan to ensure that it aligns with legislation, and they look at a number of plans, hundreds of plans per year. So certainly they can provide us with a bit of update or consideration to our plan if they see some gaps or they see some things that perhaps we could enhance in our own plan. We do have the emergency management bylaw, which council did adopt. We do belong to the Central Region Emergency Preparedness Partnership, so the communities surrounding the major metropolitan Edmonton area have agreed, in layman's terms, there's a large mutual aid agreement between all of us with respect to if something does happen to any one of our communities from time to time, there's the ability to reach out to the communities to ask if they could borrow some resources to assist them in an emergency that they might be experiencing. Of course, that doesn't give them a blanket for us to just send apparatus or loaders or public works staff or the like. Certainly it's a request, and if we have the ability to release those resources, we certainly do. But there's a general understanding that we'll do our best to support each other around the region. And then, as we've discussed in the previous agenda item, we do have mutual aid agreements with other communities. So again, the plan that we do have, the emergency management plan for our community, is reviewed annually by AEMA. We have 2 field agents that come out and they look at the plan, sit down with the chief, myself if available, to go over the plan in great detail. Usually it's a 2 or 3 hour meeting, and if they require documentation, they ask for it, take it away, review it, send it back, and they provide us a letter with the recommendations. The 2024 plan, they haven't, based on some of the activities that happened in the province, as they do function the entire central Alberta region. So they were very busy with Jasper last year, as everyone's aware. So their review of our plan will happen in the first quarter of 2025. So they're a little bit behind in the review through their jurisdiction. And the plan itself provides us the opportunity to respond to, do some pre-plans for things that we know are potential hazards in our community, and certainly it provides the opportunity for us to publicly provide education back to the community on how do you sustain yourself for 72 hours, what things should you have in your home in order to help mitigate the resources that would be required to rescue yourself if you're able to just stay in place or get yourself to a safe location. Some of the activities that happened in 2024, so we continue to increase our ICS 200. So ICS is Incident Command, and that's typically across Canada, the standard that people function emergencies. The wildfires in California would have been under this particular structure. So folks from Alberta going and helping those in California were able to speak the same language, understand exactly what was happening from a strategic operational perspective on the ground. So really it's a common language, it's a common training that allows those that are qualified or certified and have the experience to be able to speak the same language when they do respond to emergencies. Emergency Preparedness Week happens in May every year. Sometimes the wildfire smoke that creeps into our community can put a bit of a tamper on the event, as we've experienced the last couple of years. But it is well attended. We do bring in some of the other agencies from across the region and locally. So ACO Electric is there, ACO Gas is there. We do have Fish and Wildlife, RCMP, our own CPOs, fire departments, and those that would generally be part of an emergency if one was to happen. Emergency is not just fire department responding to things. An emergency can simply be a gas line's hit and we have to evacuate a neighborhood until the gas line is dealt with. So power goes out and it's minus 50, we certainly have to deal with that too. So because furnaces go out, houses cool off quickly. So there's a number of things that could constitute to an emergency, and there's a number of agencies that would assist or help us with those. Administrative review we did when Chief Nesbitt came on. That was one of the first things he picked up and looked at. So certainly that administrative oversight. We did have a lot of key positions leave the organization for various reasons, and I think a couple of weeks ago we actually sat down with a new bunch of people and got our 2025 plan in good shape. So the other thing that Jason and his group did participate in 2 or 3 sessions with Parkland County on some emergency response training too. So there was a bit of things that did happen in 2024, even with some of our more critical positions leaving the organization. 2025, so just looking forward to this year, things that we will host. So, of course, Emergency Preparedness Week we hosted in May. 4 training sessions, we hosted one just a few weeks ago. Continue to get people up to ICS 200 and beyond for those that are interested or specific positions that the chief has identified perhaps should go beyond level 200. Continue with the administrative review. I think we're pretty close to having that completed already, but certainly with our field agents coming through and looking at our plan, they may have some other suggestions that we haven't considered or perspectives that we haven't considered. And participate in a regional exercise. Also, you did mention Fire Prevention Week. That certainly could probably fall into this category. Last year, the chief introduced a unique opportunity for the community to come into the fire hall and be specific to that site and see the various things that happen in the apparatus and the ability for us to respond to various emergencies across the community. So certainly that could fall into this category too, because I think they go hand in hand with each other, even though they're identified as 2 separate weeks with the province of Alberta. Oh, that's right, went backwards. So really, what can people do to help themselves and help responders during an emergency? Of course, there's a 72-hour kit, and there's a bit of what can be put in that kit to ensure that you are prepared and self-sufficient and able to take care of yourself. I think the biggest emergencies that we've started to see in Alberta, the wildfires in Jasper for sure are a huge emergency. Their entire community was evacuated, so their ability to leave their homes was something to allow them to survive that or be self-sufficient for 72 hours. If you think about Jasper, they could only go west. The largest community west of Jasper, you're looking at Valemont is the first community. They're not very big for the number of people that were going, so they just have to continue to go west as probably the accommodations filled up. They kept going more into that Okanagan area of British Columbia. That being said, the previous year we had Edson evacuated twice from their community due to wildfire. So you can see that you just get your kit replaced and ready to go, and then all of a sudden you're back out of your home again. So key, and that's probably the biggest message that the province will share and other emergency management agencies will share, is that how do you maintain and keep yourself and your family safe during that initial 72 hours. Emergency preparedness, we continue to share this annually. Alberta Emergency Alert, it's an app that the province has. You download it on your phone. If something is happening that you need to know about, it'll push directly to your mobile device and it'll let you know what you should do and what you should consider. So some of those simply could be just freezing rain warnings. Some could be an approaching weather event that you need to be mindful of. Some could be the wildfire. So there's a various range of what this app is being used for. Often it's an advisory, so should you know what you should do, be prepared. Some is it's critical and you need to do something immediately related to the message that's going out. And Mr. Mayor, that information is all included on our webpage under emergency management page. We also do have a little bit of a guidebook that people can download and they can actually have in their homes, which walks them through some of the information that they can share with their families, emergency response plans in their own homes. How do you get out of your second floor down to a common space, just like we do here? Where's our muster point so that we can get out of the building safely and ensure that everyone's accounted for. So when the emergency services group shows up, we can say we've got everyone accounted for and they can just move forward with their operations. Mr. Mayor, that's the presentation this evening, and happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you for the presentation, and it's always good to know that we do have emergency preparedness and continue to work with our residents to make sure that they're prepared as well. Members of Council, any questions for clarity and understanding? Okay, Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and excuse me, thank you, GM Hill, for the presentation. Certainly appreciate the plug for that ebook that is on the website. Lots of good information and specific to our municipality, which is great that it's specific to our context here in Stony Plain. In the presentation, you spoke to a couple of emergencies, I guess, that have occurred in our province, most recently the Jasper fires. Can you just speak to how the experiences of our colleagues in those communities has influenced or impacted the development of our emergency plan? Have we been able to take learnings from their experiences and responses and incorporate that into our plan here in Stony Plain?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor, through to Deputy Mayor. Each community is unique. Jasper, as an example, likely some of the lessons learned would be similar to Fort McMurray or Slave Lake or someone else that experienced that wildfire that impacted their community to the degree that it did. In Stony Plain, I think we would likely be looking at, the evacuation procedure that they took in order to get the community vacated. I think when you look at the similarities, could a wildfire come in and impact us as greatly as it did Jasper? Probably on the lower level likelihood. Could we have to evacuate our community to some degree or to a large degree? Absolutely. How would we do that? I think some of those lessons learned would likely be something that might inform our emergency response plan. Definitely, because where would people go? We only have so many accesses and exits from our community. Our community could get cut off by the train, as an example, if it was a train incident. Our emergency services are on one side. How do you get people on the other side to navigate through all of that? So certainly when we look at our hazards, the train definitely is one of the bigger ones that we look at. But weather events certainly are another hazard that we do look at, and that could impact part or a portion of our community. So I would suggest when we look at things across the province that are happening, we look at the things that are most likely to impact ourselves and try and glean into some of the experiences that they've had and how that might impact our plan or our activities moving forward.
Thank you for that. And you brought up my second question actually related to the railway coming through town. We often hear from residents about concern if there's ever hazardous materials or anything, train derailment, and so on. Would you maybe just provide some general comments to our emergency preparedness specific to a rail incident and our partnership with CN and the ability to respond?
Your Worship, through the Deputy Mayor. It's a bit of a large question with respect to the materials that are on the railway. They vary from day to day. Are there hazardous materials that go through our community on a daily basis? Absolutely. Are there some that would impact our community to a great degree? Yes. When you look at Gainford a number of years ago when they had a leaking car tank, put that in Stony Plain on 50th Street, there's a large circle that we'd be drawing around the community in terms of what we would have to evacuate to safeguard our community. Likely the town office is not open in that scenario until we have control of that particular situation. When a train derails, CN deploys a lot of resources. It's a lot of money that's not traveling down their tracks. And disruption to their service is something that they take highly, so to a high degree. Often for ourselves, we're there responding initially, and then CM would come and would have some sort of unified command in terms of everyone's talking with each other to try and mitigate and achieve outcomes under that emergency response to that particular situation. So sometimes things go very quickly. Sometimes CN takes a lead role. Often it's a local agency that's got the initial lead role until those resources show up from CN. And sometimes it's a combined lead role that happens with respect to what the final outcome is. And depending on the particular emergency related to the rail, we might have to bring in resources like City of Edmonton with the dangerous goods team and or a contractor or someone larger that's got the experience and the training. Our fire department does do training with CN from time to time. They have brought in a car, a training car, so they know how to turn off the engine. They know how to navigate through some of the fundamentals of rail safety. So we do that training with CN, and we do have that opportunity. And Chief Nesbitt can call CN at any time to coordinate that type of training.
Perfect, thank you for that. Along that line, and just a really quick follow-up, does CN make the municipality aware of what's coming through the community? You mentioned that fire services have a role in first response potentially. They've done some training. Are we aware of what those goods are so that we could be prepared in our response?
Your Worship, through to Councillor, Deputy Mayor Anderson. Definitely we get a manifest. I would say that when we get the manifest, likely the cars have gone through, but the fire department does have access to real time, and they can put in the car number and they can understand exactly what is in that particular car at that particular time. So it's a lot similar to when you travel down the highway, you see a tanker truck and there's a placard on the side of the tanker truck. That number will tell you exactly what is being carried in that vessel at that time. So fire department has access to resources that will tell them what the evacuation zone is in terms of, that's their first thing. A pair of binoculars, what's the number, double check it. Okay, here's what we need to do, back up your resources so we're out of that zone that's going to be initially impacted and start getting people out of there. So life safety, property, those are the first two things that we're trying to ensure are high priorities.
Perfect, and I appreciate the responses to both of my questions here, and with our fire plan as well. Certainly preparedness is key to mitigate or minimize any potential hazards to our community, so I appreciate your responses. Thank you.
Okay, good questions. Any other questions for clear understanding? No. Definitely just a question. I think it was kind of mentioned earlier that about 1/3 of our residents don't have working smoke detectors in their communities. I'm guessing there's probably even fewer people that have a 72-hour emergency kit ready. So in terms of making sure that not only do we have resources that will be able to support our community, is how to get that information out to our residents to say you definitely need this stuff, because you can't always rely on emergency management to be there.
Mr. Mayor, certainly it's communication. I think, our job is during the times that we have the opportunity to speak with the public, and, I think with the Fire Prevention Week and having people down to the fire hall, this just becomes part and parcel to that extra communication opportunity that we get to have. Definitely Midsummer Thursdays, fire department is involved there too. So those are the types of things or opportunities for us to continue to share that information with residents. We might be shocked as to how many people actually have a kit in their home. I don't want to ask each of you because that might be indicative of what our community stats are. But really, at the end of the day, it's one of those things where it's important for you to have those types of things. Very simply, if you're on medication, a lot of people leave their medication at home. If you're in a community where you can't get to a pharmacy, that could be catastrophic for people, and they're not. That's not the emergency impacting them. That's them leaving the emergency. So it's probably we need to do more messaging, and probably every one of us need to knock on our neighbors' doors and say, hey. So it's more, what's the community accountability to ensuring that the message is shared from time to time with each other, and quiz each other and hold each other accountable to making sure that we have those in our vehicles or a go bag somewhere. Some people might have them, but they're under the stairs in the basement. In a rush, you're not even picking them up. So are they in a convenient spot? So it's one thing to have it ready. Is it in a convenient spot for you to remember it when you're walking out the door and evacuating?
Okay, thank you for that. Definitely, we'll continue to share that the news out, and definitely the emergency preparedness booklet that the town has created. Any more questions? Councillor Loynes, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to administration. Going back a couple years ago when Devon and Drayton had to be evacuated, and the province had put out the notice to head towards Stony Plain, not to stay in Stony Plain, but to head towards Stony Plain. there was a lot of miscommunication with the panic that those residents were going through as they ended up in Stony Plain looking for somewhere to go. Do we have a plan in place or procedures in place that would then mitigate the confusion for those if I remember correctly, they had their rodeo going on at the time, and so we had a lot of people who probably didn't even know where Stony Plain was on the map. So I'm just curious.
Yeah, that's one of the issues of communications, because we were not a reception center, but everybody was told to come towards Stony Plain, but not to Stony Plain. I think that was the difference.
Your Worship, through to Councillor Loynes, certainly that's a good example of clear, concise communication. Each of us as communities are authorized to put messaging out on that particular app. We do have, through our communications team, we have a number of people that are trained and can put those messages out. Certainly in a situation like that, there's several levels of vetting before that communication would get pushed. I think simply, I can't speak to who or what or how, but definitely we raised the concern with the Provincial Operations Center, and they have the ability to go in and change some of that messaging. So it took us a bit, but certainly that started to happen. Sometimes we will default to the person that originally put it out needs to change it, or the agency or the jurisdiction that's impacted needs to put that concise messaging out. If they're evacuating, it's very difficult to get a hold of them to change the messaging. So I think the province has learned some things, and there's an ability for that to improve in the future.
Thank you. Any other questions for your clarity and understanding? And thank you for bringing that example up, Councillor Loynes, because I think at that time there was a lot of confusion. We were just responding back to what Drayton Valley and the government of Alberta was saying, just like go towards Stony Plain, but not into Stony Plain. But those people that did arrive here, I know many of our local businesses stayed open to make sure that they had someplace to eat or go to the washroom. I also know that our general manager was out too, assisting people through the evening to make sure that those people that were coming with trailers were able to park over and know where Heritage Park was. And so I think that goes well to say that even though we may not be the recipient or the reception center, we do have staff that are prepared to assist that in the meantime until we actually get that clarity from the provincial government. So thank you for our staff. Okay, with that, I don't see any more hands up, so Councillor Loynes with the motion, please.
The Town Council accept the emergency management update for information.
Okay, thank you. Any debate on the motion? Call the question, all in favor? Councillor Hansard, opposed? Are you opposed? Okay, so I'll call the question again. All in favor? Okay, thank you. And that's 7, please. Okay, moving on, let's... (9.4), is the administration ready? Okay, let's go ahead, 9.4, and that'd be the 24 fourth quarter report. Go ahead, administration.
Thank you, Your Worship. We are ready, I will say. Your Worship, rest of council, always a pleasure to have the fourth quarter or any of our quarterly reports come before council and also the community here in Stony Plain. It continues to be a document, a good-looking document. There's lots of cool numbers in there. There's lots of numbers in there. For those that like numbers, there's pictures for those that like pictures. So we are quite proud of this document. Your Worship, there are some building stats in there that I think are of interest. There is also, I do appreciate the staff. I think it's on page 265, Your Worship, to the rest of council. The Christmas tree on Main Street, 5,500 pounds, equal to the weight of an elephant. That's something that I'm sure people would be interested to know. That's how much it is, as well as the 1,400 feet of lights, approximately the height of the Empire State Building. Those are fun facts here in Stony Plain. I do appreciate our team putting this all together. It's a lot of people have a hand in bringing this into the chambers, and there's some solid numbers in there, relevant numbers for council to be aware of, to understand service provisions and so on. And there are some tongue-in-cheek numbers in there too, just to make it a little bit easier to explain some of the things we do to members of our community. So, Your Worship, thanks for the opportunity to speak to it, and we can answer any questions council may have.
Definitely thank you for the report, and definitely very enjoyable to read and to see what's happened over the last quarter. Just one thing about the tree, from many of the reports that I've gotten from residents and people that have come and participated in events, that was the best looking tree they've seen since forever. So well done to our staff that picked it, and hopefully the remaining trees that are on our tree list look just as good. If not, can we fill it in? Thank you. Members of council, any questions for just, I think the town manager mentioned there's some fun facts in there, and I thought, if it's a little bit bald, can we fill it in the tree? Members of council, any questions for clarity and understanding, and maybe a few things that you want to highlight to members of council and administration? Councillor Meyer, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to administration, just going to page 250, and discussing enforcement services, and I'm just looking at the stats when it comes to engagement, and I'm just seeking a little bit of clarity there. The first question would be, so obviously these stats are just for Q4, so that's a 3-month period. Yep, okay, good. And just the, because I like the engagement. In fact, I'm really looking at that foot patrol, and I would love to see that increase, but to the, so that was just a comment that I'd slip in there, but the total 16, does that number include, say, on, our, say, tree light up? Would that include like a foot patrol there if I see peace officers there, or is that a community service engagement? Maybe if you could just kind of help me to understand those numbers a bit better.
Your Worship, through to Councillor Meyer, definitely that would be something that they've chosen to target as prescribed or scheduled. Definitely, when you go out to all of the events where we do a bit of a traffic or just a walkthrough, that's something that we just do in our enforcement duties. So likely you're not captured in this particular total. So you could, to a degree, probably say the stats are higher, but this is stuff that they've chosen and planned to do versus gone out to some of the events or some of the things that we do from time to time where it's part of their role to do the patrols through Farmers' Days, as an example. Might not be captured in here, but they do a lot of engagement with community through Farmers' Days. They do a lot of engagement, like you've articulated or clarified, with Light Up, where they're walking through. Midsummer Thursday, certainly, there's a CPO are there for each one of those. So they're walking through and they're engaging with the community. They're there for a safety perspective. They're also there for traffic perspective, but they're definitely interacting with the community when they're out at those particular events too. Versus a foot patrol, they're not in their vehicle. They've scheduled the foot patrol, which fits into their schedule, so they can just certainly go in and walk around particular areas of our community or down our trail systems to ensure that some of that enforcement that you can't do with a vehicle is being done with a targeted foot patrol. Bike patrols are certainly something that you've seen in our stats during the months that bike patrols are possible.
Perfect. I appreciate the answer. And just again, I would maybe highlight that in a 3-month period, 3 foot patrols are, while greatly appreciated, a much cheaper version of a visual sign of enforcement, cheaper than, say, having RCMP wander around on foot.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Meyer. Any more questions for clarity and understanding? Okay. Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of comments and a couple of questions. The first one, just clerical in nature. My apologies. Page 12, under the engagement table there at the top, just the misspelling of vehicle. So before we approve and publish, this would be great if that one can be corrected. I'm going to go down to page 251 and just looking at the comparative stats from 2023 to 2024 around community standards. In Q4 last year, 49 calls, and this year 187. So a significant increase there. If my math serves me, in about 350% higher. Just wondering if we can have some general comments on the increase to those statistics.
Okay, go ahead.
Your Worship, through to Deputy Mayor, if you look at the vandalism number there, that certainly has pushed that number well beyond what we're used to seeing in our community. Snow and ice, certainly, depending on the season, that can definitely impact those particular files. But graffiti, we spent a lot of time in our graffiti files this year. There has been some positive news on that particular front. So, news I can't necessarily share with you this evening, but we definitely have made some progress on graffiti in our community. But depending on weather, depending on graffiti, certainly that certainly pushes those numbers higher than you would see over a year over year.
Yeah, I appreciate the graffiti comment. It's something not just us here in Stony Plain, but Spruce Grove has been dealing with quite a bit over the last couple of years, and so appreciate, without detail, that some improvements are expected there in those numbers. I have a similar question, page 254, and this is related to our accessible transit service and looking year over year. One of the things that surprised me was Spruce Grove seeing a reduction in calls from 2023 to 2024, but what I would consider a statistically relevant increase in Stony Plain. And so with them being double our population, just some general comments, if you wouldn't mind, about what may be attributing to the numbers we see here.
Your Worship, through to the Deputy Mayor, certainly client wanting to be part of the service or not being part of the service any longer, in terms of they move away from the community and they're just not part of the client load anymore. Those are factors that come into play. Yeah, there's other reasons why they are not clients of the service from time to time, but certainly it's, generally speaking, they're moving away or away from the community, or they move into a care facility that has that transportation opportunity for them, so they don't require our services any longer. I think the biggest answer is for some reason or another, they're no longer clients or no longer needing our service, and unfortunately, we've seen a higher level of that in the Parkland County and Spruce Grove jurisdictions in 2024.
Okay, thank you. And I have two sort of comments, if I could, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
Thank you. One, page 255, great to see another solid year on the golf course. Not sad to see a dip in May and June due to the Oilers playoff run, but certainly appreciate that things have gone well on the golf course over the last couple of years. So great to see those statistics. And then what I'm most excited for, I think, page 261 is our youth services. Certainly 223 participants across the region, not all Stony Plain, but across the region, is a significant number for a youth event. I know there's some barriers that were eliminated here in terms of cost and transportation. I think tremendous kudos to the General Manager of Community and Social Development and her team for that. If we go down through the page, seeing the number of youth that have been engaged, seeing the number of programs that are offered, to me is significant. And we might look and say, well, 20 members with youth advisory or 15 youth swimming in field house, comparative to the total number of youth in our community may seem like a small number, but having worked in that industry for so long, for those youth that were engaged, it really can mean the world. And so to see the highlights here, it gives me a sense of pride that as a community we are working actively to engage the youth that live in our municipality, and I think really affirms Council's decision last year to include youth intentionally in our corporate plan, and that was to involve youth and future generations as valued members of our community. And so the focus is there. I think the results are there, and I look forward to seeing how our youth engagement flushes out in the coming year. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Any more questions, comments for clear and understanding? Councillor Hansard, go ahead.
Just comment, Mr. Mayor, on page 243, the business license renewals were up a bit, but the new licenses jumped. Overall, everything jumped a nice percentage or a nice number, and I was pleased to see that. I think that speaks to the town doing an awful lot of things right, that so many new people came into Stony Plain and took license out, and also perhaps about our communications, getting the word out that they should get a business license. The intermunicipal license didn't go up very much, but that they're actually coming to Stony Plain to get their license. So I really like seeing that. That's all.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Hansard, and that's a good commentary to just remind all our business owners that do have business license, if they renew the license through the link that they received, there is no fee for the business license. So before, I think it's before February 28th, I think.
January 31st.
January 31st. Oh, there we go. So good thing I already did mine, but I just got my email copy. So those that do have business license, if you do not want to pay for your business license because you've paid for it once, if you renew before January 31st, it is free. So thank you. Any other questions from members of council for clear and understanding? Okay. I do just have a question and maybe a comment on page 264 in terms of our infrastructure assets. I think one of the things that we've been looking at was the amount of water loss throughout our community. I think we've seen a huge increase over the last few years based on old pipes, broken pipes. But I think this year for 2024, we're tracking back to a normal range between the 8 to 12%. I think for the 10 months based on 2024, we're at 9.53. Can administration provide some commentary on that and how we're getting closer down to that number versus the 21% and the 18% and 20% in the previous years?
Yeah, Your Worship, I can provide a few comments along those lines. So I think it's been about 2 years now where our P&I department and our corporate services department have kind of focused in on this issue for sure. You can see in front of you, I mean, currently 10 months in, we're tracking back to what I do believe would have been closer to our average in Stony Plain as a community. You can see those spikes for starts in 2020, moving up into 2023. I know there's been a combination of leak detection. I know that not just out in the ground or under the ground, but checking in water meter sizing, getting some new water meters in, ensuring that the numbers that are coming in from our reads are accurate within our own computer systems as well. We've had a few, I'll say, catches over the last couple of years of a few of those that were significant enough that the changes were made, and we might be seeing a bit of that drop as well. I know our GM of Planning Infrastructure would remind me to indicate that we did have a line in service that we felt was likely pretty leaky. It has been taken out of service without any kind of impact to the remainder of the distribution system, and we believe that may have been causing us some challenges for those higher use years. So, Your Worship, what I would say is that there's been a much more focused or targeted approach from different departments within the town over the last two and a bit years. We like to believe we're seeing the impacts there. Going down to just under 10% for a 10-month stretch is a good indicator, but it's not, I wouldn't say that we were entirely out of the woods, and we have to keep working on it, keep looking at it. I would expect that we're probably getting close to knowing the 12-month. I just know as the bills, as things come in versus when things are due to be submitted and so on and so forth. I think we're probably getting closer to knowing the 11th and the 12th-month, the full year, the full calendar year, so to speak, for Stony Plain, and I'm sure we will update council accordingly and appropriately as those numbers become become known. I'll leave it at that, Your Worship, unless there's further things that can be added.
Thank you. And then I think we have, in a report, we actually had the number of like emails we sent out in terms of e-newsletters for construction, to news updates, and to just different things that we have. And we just ask people to log into the Stony Plain and just sign up so that we can have that, so they can have that data that's sent directly to their phones or to the computers. I noticed that we also add links into those emails as well. Is there an opportunity for us to, like, as we continue down with the election process and the procedures, are we allowed to put a link in to the provincial government's site, or are we only limited to our own sites?
Thank you, through your worship, to all of council. We can look at linking to provincial sites for information provision, absolutely.
Okay, thank you, appreciate that. And then definitely with the percentage of rate that that people open those emails would be probably beneficial for us as well. And my last comment is definitely thank you, administration, for providing this report for us. I'm very happy to see the numbers that are coming out. And I also wanted to kind of echo the amount of programs and events and stuff that the town focuses on preventative programming and services in our community. I think we've all heard the old saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. I think Stony Plain strives to do that. I think we can spend a little bit more money in the front end to address some of these issues, have better communications, and provide some of those programs that will net us benefits in the future. I think if we turn a blind eye to those softer social services that we have in our community and not address them, because we don't want to spend the money today, we'll be paying for it in the future. So I'm really glad to see that a lot of the programming that we're doing with our youth and with our seniors are there, and that is to build a better community, but it's also to be very prudent in terms of how we want to spend our money, future dollars. So thank you for that, members of administration, for providing that. Okay. With that, then Councillor Meyer for the motion, please.
Yes, the Town Council accept the 2024 fourth quarter report for information.
Thank you. Members of Council, any conversations and debate on the motion? Call the question, all in favor? Okay. That is carried. Moving on to 9.5, which is the fourth quarter strategic corporation, the strategic and corporate plan update. Go ahead.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. Thank you for your time this evening. Just for a bit of a quick overview, this is the fourth quarter report for our strategic and corporate plan. This report really is intended to provide a bit of a status and progress on the key actions and commitments that we have identified within our strategic plan. This plan stems from our municipal development plan, which is our long-term vision for future growth and planning for our community, and this provides really the shorter-term sort of four-year picture of what we hope to accomplish and address to move towards our long-term vision as a community. So within the report, I've identified really just some highlights of the status and progress that we've made, and I'll just walk through the report quickly and summarize some of the fourth quarter results and updates, and then can certainly answer any questions that council may have following that. So within the governance and partners theme of the strategic plan, within the fourth quarter, a couple of significant milestones that were addressed. First, under the ensuring Stony Plain's interests are represented on local and regional committees and boards and visible in plans. Of course, council conducts the annual appointment of members of the public to our committees and boards. That recruitment, preempts or occurs prior to that, and we certainly continue to fill vacancies as they're required, and those provide critical engagement as well as input and advice to council. Under strengthening the unique partnerships required to advance and redevelop Old Town South, a key update towards achieving that in the fourth quarter was certainly the work that we conducted on the the ask or the request of the Francophone School Board to the Ministry of Education and Infrastructure for consideration of a permanent Francophone school in Stony Plain as part of the recently announced School Accelerator Fund that the province is currently looking to allocate in the upcoming months. Identifying, strengthening relationships with First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. Wanted to just highlight the proclamation that was made for Métis Week in the fourth quarter. Moving down into our governance and partners, cultivating strong organizational structure and processes to deliver effective and efficient services. Highlighting Council's review of their compensation and expense policy in the fourth quarter, as well as committee bylaws and the code of conduct, which was newly established this year to provide more of a stronger framework of accountability and clarity for the committees and boards that provide feedback and support the work that we do as an organization. So certainly seeing progress and looking forward to the implementation of that as we go into the coming year. Next, under this piece of our governance and partnerships, embracing a priority and performance measurement culture and linking to our strategic vision and decision-making processes. Of course, in Q4, a significant allocation of our efforts and engagement with Council during that time was our corporate plan development and approval for 2025 to 2027. That really does allocate the resources and the requirements to transact the work that we do, the services that we deliver, and the projects that we want to undertake to support our growing community. So big milestone, which does occur annually as part of that. Moving next into engaging with our residents and stakeholders to ensure integrated decision-making and collaborative leadership. We did undertake a feedback survey for our Midsummer Thursdays program. Of course, this has come up a couple of times this evening during some of the reports previously. It's become an important community event, a number of events that occur in our downtown during the summer months, and wanting to ensure that we're ensuring that event progresses and remains relevant for the business community, for stakeholders and visitors and residents. So just a bit of a touch point on things that we can do to improve and what's important to the community in participating in that event. Moving into the community development portion of our strategic plan and developing our cultural assets of the community, it's certainly an impressive list to see of the programs, events, and services that we transact to support this area of our strategic plan. A number of these events and programs are annual and certainly leverage a lot of support from across the town organization as well as our organizational partners in the community. So it's a real demonstration of strength to see the number of events and programs that we're transacting on an annual basis. And the fourth quarter was certainly a significant portion of that with our Winterfest, the Halloween Haunted House, the Christmas ornament, which is always, a highly sought after item and celebrates a local artist, the awards that we present annually for creative excellence. And new this year was, of course, a pop-up art gallery that we host here at the Town Hall in the foyer, and really bringing the Red Brick Commons Art Gallery out into the community and bringing art to where community members interact maybe in unique areas of the community, which was really interesting and enjoyable, particularly for those of us that work here at the town office. New street banners that are decorating up our 779 corridor that runs through the community, and also highlighted some local talented artists that are featured on those banners. And then finally, of course, on the public art component of that, we placed a pretty neat little sculpture of an owl on a bench out in front of the library, and I think he's becoming quite a popular place for folks to stop by with photographs, and I'm sure we'll be continuing to add animation into our main street for years to come. Moving more into the safety and protective services piece, certainly this evening we heard some key updates from members of our administration that talked in detail with council about the work that we're doing to ensure the safety and security of our residents and the collaboration that unfolds to ensure that happens. Of course, we've noted Fire Prevention Week was quite a successful event and engaged a number of our citizens in attending the open house that the Fire Hall hosted, raising awareness there. Additionally, we've launched our Winter Warming Spaces service, and this is a regional service initiative that we deliver and ensure that those that need warm spaces during these winter months have some options for support and care. We hosted Pathways to Poverty event as well, looking to engage those in the community to ensure that we're looking at poverty reduction strategies and collaborative ways of delivering support and services to those in our community that need that level of support. In terms of enhancing civic engagement and volunteerism and neighborhood development, a couple of things that just wanted to highlight that may seem small in nature, but actually are pretty significant. The Toys for Tickets program hosted in Q4, our foyer out here just gets fuller and fuller every year with the number of donations that come in from residents that are exchanging their ticket for a gift of a toy for a local resident to make their Christmas season brighter. And as well, we hosted a pretty exciting volunteer management conference in partnership with our regional partners as well too. So some pretty exciting events that took place in Q4 to spread some community civic pride throughout the region. Looking at our Together We Shine initiative and supporting diversity and inclusion within our community, a couple of key things that were hosted in Q4 was our Walk for Wellness, some art therapy workshops to support survivors of suicide, and the community empowerment event to support families of violence prevention. Very important opportunities for folks in our community for touch points of support and learning and valuable health and wellness. And as mentioned, looking at our strategic point of action related to youth and future generations, and I know this came up in our quarterly report that was just presented prior to this one, the Youth Movie Night was hosted for the first time and was extremely successful with strong attendance from over 200 residents in the Tri-region. And again, collaboration and regional partnerships are a key point to how we deliver those services and support all of our residents across the region. Moving into our supportive infrastructure and how we manage our community and corporate assets and looking to support those critical pieces of infrastructure throughout the community. Certainly a big part of that, part of our corporate planning process at the end of Q4 is our capital plan. That's a very detailed plan that our administration develops and looks at all manners of our infrastructure and how we need to invest in equipment, utility services, roads, all of those important pieces of infrastructure that we need to grow the community, but also to maintain service levels and ensure that we have well-maintained and well-functioning infrastructure for our residents. Moving into developing facilities and amenities that meet the needs of our current and future residents and stakeholders. I think there was an important groundbreaking event that we held with some shovels and some dirt moving to build what I believe to be a pretty significant recreation facility for the community going forward. Pretty significant milestone for all of us. That's been many years in the making, and it was pretty exciting to see us on that. It seemed like kind of a chilly, gloomy day, but I was feeling pretty excited, and I know those of us and our partners were pretty thrilled to throw some dirt around and get that project started, and more to come on that one. Following that, our efforts to establish a cemetery, a non-denominational municipal cemetery in the community, hit some major milestones in Q4 as well, with an update, but also more importantly, a bylaw that establishes the legislative framework for our cemetery once we have the construction in place to deliver those services. So looking forward to that in 2025 as we progress. Under the economic opportunity section of our strategic plan, really positive opportunity to meet with the Alberta Minister of Transportation and Economic Corridors about commercial and residential development opportunities that are happening in our community and how we need to collaborate with the province on ensuring that our highway infrastructure, provincial highway infrastructure, is in alignment with the work that we're doing to grow our community. And great opportunity to meet with the provincial government on that and further those dialogues and encourage the province to ensure that our investment is timely and collaborative and supportive of growth opportunities that exist within our community. So important milestone there. We also presented long-standing business member in our North Business Park, Mayor Timberframe, with our Ambassador of Action Business Award at the Chamber of Commerce Awards Night in Q4 as well. We continue to see progress on the Fiber Connect program. There has been an update provided to our Growth and Commerce Committee on Q4, and they certainly have been proactively working in our North Business Park and some of the older areas in our community to see that project to address the gaps really that are small in number but significant in terms of ensuring that our digital infrastructure is where it needs to be for all of our residents and all of our businesses. Looking at our partnerships with both Edmonton Global and the Edmonton Metropolitan Region Board, Q4 was a pretty significant occasion where we received notification from the Government of Alberta that they're going to be defunding and shifting to a voluntary membership for EMRB, and most recently the board made the decision to wind down operations at their January 23rd board meeting. So those operations will shift the services of our regional metropolitan board as of the end of March, and we'll be looking at some different opportunities to continue to work collaboratively with our regional partners, perhaps maybe under some different frameworks. But this is certainly a big change, and we will be working through the impacts of that certainly in the months to come. Exciting opportunities in our North Business Park to see the area structure plan presented to council for approval. Certainly this aligns well with the highway development strategy and the work that we've been doing on business attraction efforts for the community over the last number of years. So significant milestone in that area of the work that we're doing. Moving to our environmental responsibilities theme within our strategic plan, a couple of significant events that occurred in Q4. We did receive a funding grant program through ATCO to support electric vehicle charging stations, and so there's going to be 2 of those installed in the community to support those vehicles operating and maintaining charges in our community. We updated the municipal development plan to align with the regional agricultural master plan, so ensuring our policies are taking into consideration the work that was done at the regional level on agricultural land protection. And then we did a couple of campaign projects and community engagement opportunities in Q4, both the Black Knot Awareness Campaign to try and mitigate and diminish the Black Knot impact on our trees in the community, and a fall cleanup was hosted in Q4, which builds off of the spring one that we do every year annually. So that was a new opportunity for residents to engage and support some of our taking good care of our community on an ongoing basis. In terms of key corporate plan initiatives that Council has approved and got as we guide through the next number of years, our Old Town redevelopment plan Old Town Redevelopment Initiative continues to be an important component of the work that we're doing to support the recreation facility and development to balance out western growth in the community. We did, of course, in Q4 submit, and with council's approval, funding application to the Local Growth and Sustainability Fund to support the stormwater pond work that's occurring in the Brickyard area and supporting the stormwater management within the Old Town South area of the community. The Public Works facility continues to be under construction. It's exciting to see that building, coming along as you pass by it every day, and looking forward to the completion of that in 2025. And so the construction just continues on that facility, and excited to see the impact of that on our services and operations. Already highlighted the Community Recreation Center update, but just a little summary there of some of the key milestones and overall project intent on that. And finally, the Housing Accelerator Project, which was really an initiative that we pivoted and demonstrates our agility to respond to opportunities within the federal and provincial government to support diversity of housing developments and encourage housing developments. Our town manager spoke about our housing starts this year and the progress and improvement that we've seen in terms of building activity in our community, and some of the projects that are outlined here, are sort of underlying policy and review work looking at ways that we can improve and support development and growth within the community. One of the key outcomes in Q4 was the parking study that was presented to council a little earlier at the end of the year, and so there are a number of other projects that are going to be unfolding over 2025 and into 2026 as part of that project, are summarized on the screen. So that, Your Worship, appreciate the time and opportunity to highlight that. It's been a really exciting 2024, and certainly lots of progress has been made on our strategic plan key actions. Look forward to presenting an update of our strategic plan for 2025 to 2028 to council next month. So just thought I would take that opportunity to give a bit of a fulsome update of where we're at on our strategic plan as we look at kind of presenting the revisions and what's on the horizon for that in the next month. So thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you for the presentation, highlighting a lot of the stuff that our staff has done in our community over the last year. Members of council, any questions for clarity and understanding? Okay. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the overview this evening. Always great to see the actions that are taken to sort of continue the work on the strategic and corporate plan, so we appreciate the update. One of the initiatives that I brought up a couple of times, I believe administration let us know it was coming forward Q1 of this year. Just want to make sure it doesn't get missed. I don't see it in the Q4 update here, and that's related to the accessibility audit that I think was being undertaken in Q4, continues in Q1 this year. It's not captured in our 2025 corporate plan, wasn't captured here. And so just want to make sure that I make a note that that's something that I look forward to seeing come back to council. On page 273, I'm just going to ask maybe administration for a bit of an update here, talking about conducting meaningful engagement. This is under governance and partners. Certainly a number of different things have been undertaken over the last couple of years. Just wondering if administration can maybe speak to the format or how these engagements were conducted. I know public hearings obviously were here, or public advertising bylaw hearings were in here, but some of the other ones, Midsummer Thursdays feedback, mental wellness strategy engagement, and so on. How do we engage the community in seeking their feedback related to those initiatives?
Thank you, Worship. Through to Deputy Mayor. In terms of our public engagement efforts and how we determine the best path forward on those, we do have a public participation policy that is a council policy to helps us to frame and guide the engagement work that we do. So that's our initial touch point on creating sort of a consistent approach to how we do public engagement. Within that, there are a number of layers that can respond to perhaps the complexity or the level of impact that a particular project might require in terms of engagement. So looking at the target audience, looking at sort of the impact across the community, looking at sort of some of the outcomes and things like that are intended for particular projects. So often public engagement really does start with the purpose of why we're reaching out to the community. What is it that we need from the residents, whether it's perhaps feedback or ideas about particular services or programs that we're exploring to do, feedback or ideas with services and programs that we're delivering currently, and we just want to understand if we're meeting the needs of residents and the target audience or the user groups, or perhaps it's something more specific related to particular legislation or things like that are much more prescribed, right down to how council seeks to have public participation in the decision-making process, so public hearings and the committees and boards that council utilizes for advice. So there are different layers of public engagement, and so there's different tools and tactics that we employ, and some of that's guided by administrative experience and capacity. Some of it's provided by external consultants that might be providing sort of that third-party outsider's objective viewpoint and offering some lens of perspective on that. I hope I'm answering the question correctly, but if there's something more specific you're looking for, Deputy Mayor, please feel free to chime in.
Yeah, I don't know that there's a specific answer I'm looking for. I think over the years, one of the things that I've found is the value of in-person engagement. And, I think looking at the youth results from the movie night and the number of youth that were engaged in the survey responses and that sort of thing there, I think that speaks to that level of personal engagement that I think allows residents to buy into the feedback that they're offering. And I tend to see a lot of digital requests for information, not just from the municipality, just in general. There's always surveys and those sorts of things flying around, and I think there's a little bit of digital fatigue that maybe comes into play. And so my only comment here is that I would hope when possible, I know certainly it's resource intensive at times to do those in-person engagements, certainly more so than putting out a digital survey. But in the experience that I've had in my short time on council, the in-person engagements have really resonated with residents, and hope that we can continue those in-person engagements as much as possible. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions for clarity and understanding from members of council? Okay. Seeing none, I do have one that wasn't asked. Page 281. Just looking at the old town kind of scenario there. I think one of the initiatives that we had for 2024 was the annual facade improvement and placemaking grant program. I know hasn't been much done because I haven't heard anything. Can administration provide an update where we're at with that and if that's going to get rolled over to 2025?
Thank you, Worship. I am aware that project is in progress. Nothing has been shared publicly with regards to that yet, but I do know it's in progress, and we can certainly provide an update to council directly on kind of the timelines and when that's going to be rolled out. So, but I am aware that it is, those both are in development.
Okay, thank you for the update. Anything else? Thank you on behalf of council and our residents. There's a lot of work that's been done here, and these are just the the highlight key areas that, the initiatives and stuff that our residents have been exposed to and what our staff has done. I think when you see the amount that has been completed, it makes your head go, wow, like there's so much done. And most of our residents only see a small sliver of that because either they're not in the ability to use those services or participate in those things, but it is the fact that there's so much that's happening that we're trying to encompass a lot of things. So, and that's, above and beyond the day-to-day and week-to-week that our staff do. So on behalf of council and the residents, thank you for the work that you've done over last year and to continue to do in the years coming forward. I know this is a lot to ask because members of council, we have a strategic plan and we keep on pushing administration to get those targets and to achieve those goals, because we're building a community that is for us today, and that's setting us up for the future. And sometimes it goes a little bit faster, and sometimes it goes a little bit slower than we want, but we know that we're on the same page, because this is the council strategic plan, that we take the opportunity and time to engage our residents and bring all that information to that planning, which all 7 of us have input on, and also administration to say, yeah, that's a great idea, but timing and how much one do this and that. And that's why some of the things that we've seen in different master plans over the years that don't get onto this stage yet is because we just don't have that timing, don't have the resources, but we're getting there. So I just ask our residents to continue to read our municipal development plan, read our strategic plan, read our corporate plans. That gives you the direction and the vision that we're going in terms of community. And then that vision is what will Stoney Paine look like when we're 30,000 people. We may not like growth, but it's going to happen. And if we're in front of it and we're able to control it and kind of massage it to where we want as a community, we're a better off community if we do that instead of just letting it happen. So thank you for the commitment from council and administration to make sure that they follow through on our strategic plan. Councillor Laurie for the motion, please.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I will move that Town Council accept the Strategic and Corporate Plan Q4 2024 report for information.
Thank you. Any debate on the motion? Okay, call the question. All in favor? Okay, that is carried. All right, moving on, number 10 of our agenda is council discussion. This is the time that council members can bring things up they've heard from the community members or anything that they want to highlight in terms of the boards and committees that they sit on, or just something that they want to share with the rest of council and administration. Councilor Palechico, anything to add?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to make a bit of a comment regarding Public Works and the great job that they're doing in our community with snow removal. It was just recently by a number of residents. I was directed to several of the chat sites that we have in our community. And it's always interesting to see the criticism that comes across from the select small handful of people. But what was more interesting was how many people in our community are paying attention to the small group of people that complain and correcting them on what they're doing. So kudos to our staff for getting up early in the morning and going and doing a fine job. Staying long hours to get it done so that all of our community benefits from the work that they're doing, even though we have the odd complaint within our community. I think what I noticed recently is the chat groups. There is very few getting out there that are critical, but there is more getting out there that's positive. So I think our community and our Public Works Department is doing a fine job at what they're doing and staying on top of it to keep residents, for the majority, happy. So kudos to Public Works.
Thank you for bringing those comments forward, Councillor Palechico. Councillor Hansard.
Your Worship, I just wanted to say that I did have some comment along the lines of what Councillor Palechico said. You can always find the people who want to complain about something. What I'm seeing more of is the people who are grateful. And you only have to go into some neighboring communities, some quite close, and get off the main drags, get into the back streets to see how rough some of the passage is. I have 2 daughters who live in Spruce Grove, and their streets are rough. And you drive around Stony Plain and all the snow didn't get removed right down to the pavement like people are used to, but boy, is it better in so many ways. And so always Public Works deserves our praise. I simply want to mention again the strat planning. I'm still affected by that because I thought it was one of the most effective strat planning sessions that I've been involved in, and I've been involved in a lot. I thought overall, when I first heard where we were going for this, I thought, what in the world are they doing, taking us to the boonies? And then I was fortunate to ride with Councillor Palechko, so I didn't have to worry about finding my way. But I thought it was one of the best welcomes we ever had. We were housed well, fed well. We were strat planned well by administration. We had wonderful time to be together and learn from each other and relax together because there wasn't a lot of other places to go, and it was so cold you almost had to stay inside. But overall, I thought it was just a marvelous opportunity, so I challenge administration to find another such wonderful place, because it does make a difference when you can come together, stay together, and really kind of do everything together. So thank you very much for that again.
Thank you, Councillor Hansard. Councillor Meyer?
You know, we don't talk about this ahead of time, and so of course I'm going to make a Public Works complaint, and I shouldn't make it a complaint because, like my fellow councillor said, you know, they do a phenomenal job, and my complaint is more nitpicking than say a complaint. But I was out on the Black Paths this weekend, and now that I hear about all this road clearing, maybe that's what they were doing. But I know we are responsible for ice control as well, and with the freeze thaw, I'm sure it's, you know, I want to make excuses for Public Works. You know, I'm sure some of that ice formed after they cleared the paths, which were 90% clear, but some of those places that melt over and freeze again, I would just like to highlight that they could use some sanding. I'm not sure if they've been out there since the weekend, but that would be my comments for this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Meyer. Councillor Lowry.
Thank you, Your Worship. Actually, again, the snow removal was something that I was going to bring up. And what I was going to ask for, and unfortunately I know the general manager for the department isn't here at this moment, but I was going to ask to see if we could get some type of a review or a report or an overview. Because I think, you know, to what Councillor Palechko has said is that there's a lot of very, I don't know if I want to call it misinformation, but there's a little bit of confusion. There's assumptions. There's a lot of that going on. And, you know, it's best when you hear it from the horse's mouth. And so if we could, I know we've got our GMP meeting coming up next week, or we've got our RCM on the 10th. If there's an opportunity where council and the public could receive a bit of a mid-year update from the department in respect to the snow removal activities on both our roadways and our pathway system, just to kind of lay it all out there, explain exactly why, what processes have been undertaken, why they've been undertaken the way they are, any service level changes that have occurred, anything that we're trying. I know we'd spoken a little bit before about some of our priority routes where they're doing the middle and not necessarily the parking lane all the time. So there are a couple of changes that have occurred. There's a couple of things that we're doing differently, and just want to make sure that we get very accurate, very clear information out to the public. And I think the best way to do that will be at a council meeting, where then we can also ask any concerns, any questions that have been raised by residents. So hopefully that would be possible.
Okay. Thank you. And definitely that's a report that can come back.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I can maybe make a few comments to that and provide a bit of maybe some thought, so to speak, into that. I appreciate the dialogue with council. I mean, snow removal is an important service. It is a highly visible one. People are interested in it and all of that. Had the good fortune on Saturday to stop by the public workshop, and again, I'm proud to say that I stopped into still pretty early for me, and they were stopping for lunch at about 9:30. They are a dedicated group. They are proud. They are diligent, and they certainly do the best they can. They did tell me they're having a bit of a heck of a go. It is pretty icy. It is pretty chunky. I heard about some of the blowing pins on some of the machines and so on and so forth. And there's nobody that knows their business better than that crew that does it day in, day out over a number of years. Councillor Meyer, I guess respectfully, absolutely, we want to hear about stuff that isn't maybe up to par. That's as important as anything about understanding where we need to focus on, work harder, get better, so on and so forth. And appreciate that commentary as well. Your Worship, back to a bit of a request there. I just took a quick look at the agenda package coming up and so on and so forth. And what I can say is that I can ask our staff on that side of the operation to put something together as soon as we can do so. I think I saw the 3rd, the 10th, and the 24th. Does that sound close? I will commit to the 24th. We can try for the 10th. But I just know the way that we have to have things due in advance and so on and so forth makes that tight. But I do appreciate again, there's a lot of good work, a lot of hard work. It is tricky, it is challenging. There's a bunch of different things that go into it. But I know it would be an opportunity to let the many good people of Stony Plain who believe in that work and see it every day understand and know the parameters of what we're doing and what we're achieving out there.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much. That's all for me this evening.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Loyens, please.
Should I talk about snow?
Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to point out that on Friday from 3 to 8:30 at the Pavilion, we have the Youth Speak Summit. It is for the age group of 16 to 24 youth. I don't have a lot more information about it, but I'm sure the general manager of community services, I'm losing it today, sorry, would have some more information on that one. I do know that you can pre-register to attend, but it is a free event. As well on Friday is we have the Stony Plain Library's 80th birthday party. And Groundhog Day is on February 2nd. But other than that, that's it for myself.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Loyens. Does administration want to speak about the Youth Speaks Summit? I think that's a great event that Town of Stony Plain looks to partner with their regional neighbors to address some of the needs and try to preventative issues.
Thank you, Your Worship. The event on Friday afternoon is an event for youth to gather to help us gain a better understanding of what they value in the community. It's also a chance for them to hear from Tyler Smith, who is a Humboldt Broncos survivor and winner of Amazing Race, and winner of the Amazing Race. And so he's intending to share some conversations with the youth and engage them in thoughts about what being resilient means, what overcoming adversity is about, and really just give the chance for youth to connect with the community and for us to gain a better understanding of how we as a community can support the youth.
Thank you for that update. And definitely it's shared through our social media channels and also, and definitely if those that have teenagers or youth that may be interested, definitely share that with them as well. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't going to talk about snow, but I think I need to make just one quick comment. One of the things that I've really appreciated this time around, not just our snow crews, but our communications department. Something that I've noticed that I believe to be a shift, I don't recall seeing this in the past, is the daily updates. Not that that's new, that's consistent. But within that daily update, it's not just letting residents know where crews are going to be, but it has provided a bit of an explanation as to what's going on. We've seen lots of questions about second passes. Are you coming back? How come we're not getting right to the edges? And certainly those answers are contained in those releases. Now, if somebody's not signed up to receive those or isn't on social media to receive those updates, that may be missed. I've also seen updates similar when we've had to pause residential snow removal in the neighborhoods to go back to some of our main routes. And so certainly I've seen an increase in communication and certainly appreciate all the work that's gone into some of the bigger questions that have been asked. Working at a school every day, one of the things that has happened is our entire field has actually turned to ice, and we've had to limit access during unstructured times or recess times for students because it's become so icy. And so it's that warm wind that comes across, and whether that's going across the paths back on the road, it's creating a lot of issues. We go out with sand, the next day it's a warm wind, the sand melts, the snow melts, goes to the bottom, ice freezes over, and so it's a bit of a catch-22, rock in a hard place, whatever analogy you like, to try to keep those up to date. So I appreciate the work that's going in and the communication that's going out from the municipality. What I did want to share this evening has been touched on a couple of times, and that was our strategic planning at Métis Crossing. One of the things that's really stuck with me leaving, and even tonight looking at our election bylaw, is it probably was the last time for this team, meaning SLT and council, to be together in that capacity, helping to guide our community forward. And certainly we, on occasion, have turnover in our senior leadership team, but it's not often that a community runs a full slate of council back. I don't know what that looks like, but certainly a very, very productive weekend, and being sick, I appreciated the grace that was offered to me, the patience of my colleagues and our administration. But going from being a resident in Stony Plain, having this opportunity to be on council, our community is led by some very, very good people. And as such, that council may turn over, we have a strong administration that's in place. We'll continue to lead and guide our community, whether we have a return of our council or whether we have new councillors and mayor in the future. Our community's in very good hands, and that certainly was a huge takeaway for me. So extending gratitude again to our administration and my council colleagues for all you do to lead and guide the municipality of Stony Plain.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Not much to updates, just thank everyone for their openness at Council Strategic Planning. It is definitely a time where members of council open up fully to what we believe is highlights of our community and what we want to see forward. But all always boils down to what the shared priorities are. And that's what we come back to each and every year is when we adopt the strategic plan, is that we had a lot of conversation, a lot of what do we see and envision, and then it comes back to what our strategic plan is, which we will adopt February 24th, if I remember correctly, on that. But that's the foundation and the basis of where we want to go as a community, and that's a fine balance of financial responsibility as well. Right? When we do that, is make sure that we provide a very good level of service for our community residents without overtaxing our residents. Because we all know that there's only one taxpayer everywhere, regardless if it's federal taxes, provincial taxes, or municipal taxes. There's only one taxpayer. And we just need to be cognizant of that. That is why we do and take the time to plan. I also want to highlight to our residents as well, is when the town of Stony Plain raises the mill rate to garner a little more taxes so we can provide more services and to maintain the service levels that we do have. It's not done lightly. It's done with a lot of thought, a lot of pre-planning, and a lot of what if. Right? As the other levels of government continue to cut costs and download the services, municipalities will be requested to provide more services for our residents. And that will be a hard conversation with our community. When the services that they're used to being provided by the provincial and federal governments are no longer there, they'll be coming to us, as we are the closest level of government to our residents. They see us in the streets, they see us in the shopping centers, restaurants, they'll coming to ask us, why don't we have these services anymore? And then through those conversations, as mentioned by Deputy Mayor, Council, maybe this full slate again next year after the next election, maybe there's some changes. We'll have to have that conversation of how much services do we want and what is the tipping point in terms of a tax increase. And also how we want to support a community. I know we will not be able to do everything, but planning is the best way forward. So thank you for members of council for taking that time and dedicating a full weekend for that conversation so that we can lead and guide our community. That ends council discussion. Moving on to number 11, which is closed meeting. There is nothing scheduled tonight, so we'll move on to adjournment. And with that, thank you for members of council for reading your agenda package. I know it was lengthy and long, and I definitely appreciated the comments and the questions coming out of that reading. And administration, thank you for providing the agenda package, and we look forward to reading the next one. Hopefully it's just as invigorating and in depth as we continue to talk about what we want to see in our community. With that, we're adjourned. Thank you.